Kids in that meeting as well.
All right, everybody ready? All right. All set?
You go ready?
Get it started. Okay.
He's ready when you're ready.
All right. Okay, everyone, we're going to start the meeting up. This is the May 8th, 2025 Town of Fishkill Planning Board meeting. Welcome, everyone. I'll call the meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. And would you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty. So just a reminder for everyone to please silence your cell phones and everyone speak clearly into the microphone when speaking so everyone can hear. We have 6 voting members present tonight. Felix Lopez is not able to attend. So I would like to appoint Kevin O'Connell, who is one of our alternate members, to be a voting member tonight. So that'll bring us to 7, a full board. All right, thanks. Okay, so we have one public hearing tonight. We'll start with that. This is for Century Aggregates, 107 US Route 9 Site Development Plan. The applicant seeks site development plan approval to redevelop a 0.91 acre portion of an existing commercial site known as the Snow Valley Campground. The project involves the construction of an 8,050 square foot concrete batch plant in the area where the former Snow Valley Campground was located. The site also contains the remains of a building that serves several commercial uses. The applicant is proposing 11 parking spaces for the concrete trucks and the concrete plant employees. The concrete plant will be accessed using the existing bridge over Clove Creek that served the former Snow Valley site. Public access to the site will solely occur from the entrance on US Route 9 opposite Carroll Lane. The parcel is located at 107 US Route 9 and consists of 310 plus or minus acres in the GB General Business, PI Planned Industry, and R40 Residential One-Family Zoning Districts. Could I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
Anthony moves it. Fred seconds it. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the public hearing is open by a vote of 7-0. All right, welcome, Mr. Day.
Good evening.
If you could just give a very brief synopsis of the proposal so that the members of the audience and those at home can understand it.
Sure. As the chairman mentioned, it's a 310-acre parcel. The parcel that's being actually developed is only 9/10 of an acre. It's the former Snow Valley campsite, which was accessed from an existing bridge across Clove Creek. The site has been dilapidated for a number of years. There was a number of campers that had since been removed from the site. There's ruins of an old building that was actually, it was a bar at one time, and it served many purposes, but it's still on the site and it's in pretty poor condition. There's no proposal to remove and or improve it. The site is basically a batch plant that'll be placed at the rear of the property. It's about 2,200 feet from an intersection, the nearest home, I should say. Also, the site is served by, it was served by an access on Route 9 that I'm sure a lot of you remember as part of an application that was done prior to this application. That roadway entrance was closed. A new entrance was placed at the southern end of the site down by Carroll Lane. It was approved by the DOT and it will serve both this site as well as the existing mine. We've been in front of the board. We've addressed the majority of the comments, and we're here tonight to present the project for review.
Okay, thanks. So first, could I just see a show of hands from those in the audience who would like to speak at tonight's hearing? Okay, so we have a good number. So I'm going to start off by reading our rules of conduct for public hearings. Speakers are asked to come to the podium and identify themselves so that their name may be entered into the record. Speakers are limited to one turn at the microphone and limited to no more than 4 minutes. So our attorney, Dominic Cordisco, will be the timekeeper for the public hearing, so he'll give the speakers a heads up when there's 1 minute left to speak. Speakers should provide only new or different information, in other words, repetitive comments made previously or at prior meetings are discouraged. Speakers are encouraged to submit their comments in writing, and we actually have gotten a number of those already, so that comments can be summarized during the hearing. Comments are limited to matters involving the business before the board, that is the particular application under review tonight. No verbal interruption, shouting, or other outbursts or obscene language. And no speaker shall make any personal attacks on anyone. All right. So again, let me see a raise of hands for those who would like to speak. This gentleman got your hand up first, so why don't you come up and give us your name and address, please?
Good evening, everyone. I'm at my name is Matthew Salcedo, 3691 Route 9. Our property is actually adjacent to Century Aggregate. We have about 19 acres. I'm 33 years old. We've owned this property for about 25 years. I've watched this property develop over time. Even Clove Creek is something I walk down personally multiple times a year. Greatest concerns with looking at this project is first and foremost the amount of traffic coming out. That entrance on Carroll Lane actually dumps a lot of water now onto our property, which was unfortunately, I know this isn't about this, but it's kind of talking about the aftermath on what happens with some of these decisions. Greatly affected us in that way, enlarging our wetland profile, etc. The amount of traffic coming into this, I think, is something that's cause for concern. I've been pulling out of our property I've been driving since I was 18, 15 years now. It's getting more and more traffic. The amount of trucks coming in and out that are proposed for a concrete plant, they're large, they're slow to get up to speed. In the mornings, it can take almost 10 minutes just to pull out, and we have a clear line of sight on our property. We have a big brick building with a blue roof, if you guys are familiar. I think that's first and foremost a huge concern with adding more traffic into that, even though it is DOT proposed. Second and most important to me, as someone who's grown up, I just had a baby 2 weeks ago, third generation that'll be here, be living there, is the aquifer. On our property, we're currently undergoing different changes, and the amount of hoops that we have to jump through to protect the aquifer and what it is, I think it's a bit crazy that a concrete batch plant could be put so close to Clove Creek, being its importance to the Hudson River. I have a picture of a bald eagle from 2 months ago just sitting right on Clove Creek, sitting in that area. And for my own personal knowledge, that area, he said, dilapidated. That is absolutely correct. I would suggest or propose, hope, that if they do move forward with this application, that whole area be remediated. There's an area that's got to be about 200-300 car tires, if I remember, on that property. It basically became a dump towards the end of its lifeline. If they're going to leave buildings and things like that there, if we're going to get that close to Clove Creek, I think all these issues should be addressed, cleaned up, and made up to par with something that's so close to the water that can affect our environment and our aquifer for generations to come. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yes. All right, who would like to be next? Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
My name is Madeline McGinley. I live on East Mountain Road North in Phillipstown. I've been there for 22 years. I'm also concerned about the truck traffic. Route 9 has been a site of many serious accidents, one of which I was a victim of. While traveling south on Route 9, I was waiting to make a left turn onto East Mountain Road North, and my car was rear-ended by an 18-wheeler tractor-trailer going 50 miles an hour. My car was totaled and I suffered multiple injuries, so I know firsthand how traffic safety is problematic in this stretch of Route 9. Add to this an entry to the proposed concrete plant directly opposite the companion pet hospital. After having 2 dogs over many years in their care, it was so difficult to pull out onto Route 9 from the hospital. The sight lines are poor at this spot with a hill and a curve as cars approach from the north. I end up turning right and turning around at the Home Depot parking lot because I can't make a left turn. So imagine a slow-moving concrete truck pulling out at this spot. There may not even be enough time for a car to stop as they come around the curve before they even see the slow truck pulling out. And once they're stopped waiting for the truck to pull out, there would be a backup behind them, potentially causing some accidents. I have some comments about the Town of Fishkill Comprehensive Plan and its goal to, quote, create an enhanced gateways that welcome visitors to our town and define Fishkill as a quality community, which includes the Route 9 entrance from the south, from the town of Phillipstown extending into Fishkill, end quote. As one travels south on Route 9 from Fishkill into the area of the proposed plant, there is already a gateway, and one can notice the difference. It becomes a scenic byway with more trees, mountains on either side. The road goes from 6 lanes to 2, from straight to curvy, and from flat to rolling. It's kind of nice. But with the concrete plant there, one would see 3 60-feet-high silos in front of Fishkill Ridge. The applicant submitted a sightline study, which I looked at, showing that the silos would not be visible from Route 9 because of the grade changes, as well as a tree buffer. But the site is virtually wide open, and the trees along Route 9 are deciduous. Due to the curves in the road and the seasonal changes, unless mature evergreen trees are planted the entire length of the Route 9 frontage, the silos would be visible and would negatively impact the view of Fishkill Ridge.
Excuse me, just want to let you know, 1 minute warning.
Yep. Some will say, well, it's already a commercial industrial zone. True, but I believe this project will put us over the limit and will make the gateway between Fishkill and Phillipstown something that the residents of Fishkill do not envision in their comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. All right, yes, sir, come on up.
Thank you very much. My name is Carlos Salcedo. I've been a resident of this area for about 40 years. I have a property next to where this development is going to be, and also a house nearby. I think that I will add just a couple of matters to what already was eloquently presented here. The roads in Route 9 were not developed, created for this kind of traffic. Adding trucks, and they're not going to be light trucks. It's going to be have big impact not only on the road conditions, on the traffic, and I think everybody is concerned about it. I'm also concerned about the negative impact of on public health and environment. Clove Creek is like a peril that we all are dealing with. My property goes has a boundary with the creek, and not only we have respected that, but we have been mandated to pay as much attention as we can to leave nature. And this the dust and the pollution that's going to come from the operating of that plant is going to have definitely an impact on the environment, on the creek, and in general terms on the living conditions of business and residential houses all across, whose value is going to diminish not improve with this development. I can see that corner, I can see what has happened in the last 10 years, and I think we have exceeded the limit of what can happen on traffic and development, and I appreciate the opportunity. I hope you listen to the citizens, and this is what democracy at work it is, and our voices of the ones who live here should be heard. Thank you.
Yes, we definitely listen to the comments, and we appreciate you all coming. Yes, ma'am, come on up.
Good evening. My name is Susan Ansbach, and I live on East Mountain Road South in Phillipstown. The town of Fishkill, in its recently updated comprehensive plan, admirably recognized, among other things, that continuing to enhance Fishkill's quality of life for its residents and neighbors requires protecting water, air, and land. I'd like to focus my remarks on the air quality that I believe would suffer based on the proposed concrete batch plant. The applicant has revised his plan to state that the plant would operate a minimum of 67 hours per week and occasionally have to be open longer. That's 5 days a week, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturdays, 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. In addition to the emissions generated by the production of this material, the applicant has also stated that, quote, other emissions will include diesel exhaust from a loader, forklift, and concrete mixers, end of quote. It is well established that concrete batch plants generate dust and particulate matter. The U.S. EPA has stated that high particulate matter negatively affects human health because these particles lodge deep within one's lungs. It's unclear to me at this time what, if any, remediation has been proposed for the dust that will be generated by this plant. Additionally, the emissions generated in the air by concrete batch plants are known to travel anywhere from a minimum of a 5-mile radius to a 20-mile radius, depending on the wind. Using the smaller 5-mile radius means this plant will shower its toxic dust on at least 100 residential homes located on Carroll Lane and in the Brookside Senior Park on Route 9 between Carroll Lane and East Mountain Road North. Air quality has been appropriately taking center stage recently, and although this area may be zoned, quote, planned industrial, I don't think a concrete batch plant fits easily into that description. One of the goals, has been mentioned by others, of the comprehensive plan is to create gateways and to welcome people to this town. I do not think that goal would be well met if traveling north on Route 9 from Phillipstown to Fishkill, one of the first things one would encounter would be dust and huge 60-foot silos towering over the left side of the road. I respectfully request that the town planning board deny the applicant permission to build a concrete batch plant on this site as proposed, or require substantial modifications to its proposal. And I thank you for your consideration and time this evening.
Thank you. All right. Yes, sir. Come on up.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ted Warren. I'm the Public Policy Manager for the Hudson Highlands Land Trust. I want to preface my remarks by thanking the Planning Board for holding this public hearing. We appreciate the opportunity to outline our concerns that we have about the proposed project. Impacts to the environmental integrity of Clove Creek, which is classified as a Class C trout stream by the New York State DEC, are a major concern for HHLT. Batch plant materials can also leach into groundwater, potentially impacting the regionally unique sand and gravel aquifer that lies under the creek and the proposed project site, and which provides drinking water to multiple municipalities. Concrete production involves materials like cement, fly ash, and chemical admixtures that can be toxic to aquatic life and which can dramatically alter stream chemistry in the event of accidents, spills, or inadequate containment. Compacted pervious surfaces associated with this project are likely to increase runoff volume and velocity, which can transport pollutants into Clove Creek. Given the increase in extreme precipitation events that we're facing these days, and the fact that the proposed plant is located at the base of steep slopes, the potential for storms to overwhelm the proposed containment and drainage systems during heavy precipitation events should be closely examined. HHLT is also concerned about the applicant's stated intent in the submitted full EAF to withdraw up to 10,000 gallons of water a day from on-site wells, which could further impact both Clove Creek and the underlying aquifer. In addition to potential negative impacts on aquatic species, there's also potential impacts on terrestrial species and habitat in an area of very high conservation value and bordering existing state parkland. According to the New York State DEC and the New York State Natural Heritage Program, core forests on this parcel rank among the top 10% for forest condition in New York State. The entire property is part of an important area for rare terrestrial animals. The hillside to the west of the proposed expansion is important foraging habitat for a timber rattlesnake, which is listed as threatened in New York State. And Clove Creek riparian corridor is designated as a critical environmental area by DEC. The potential for habitat fragmentation associated with construction and operations of this proposed plant may disrupt wildlife corridors and isolate populations. Noise pollution can disrupt wildlife behavior, breeding patterns, and communication. Light pollution from early morning or evening operations can affect nocturnal species and migration patterns. In terms of specific site plan concerns, HHLT recommends that a thorough engineering study of the existing access bridge connecting the project to Route 9D be required of the applicant. The existing bridge is old, and the potential for an accident or structural failure leading to the contamination of Clove Creek and the major aquifer underneath is a significant concern. Furthermore, a thorough review of viewshed impacts beyond the localized concerns related to the proposed silo heights should be required of the applicant, given the proximity of this project to state parkland and the Appalachian Trail and other conserved properties. I also had some points about the comprehensive plan. Some other folks have expressed that very eloquently, so in the interest of time, I'll leave that out, but we will be submitting a fully detailed letter to Planning Board Secretary. Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right, who would like to be next? Yeah, come on up. Yeah, come on up, yeah.
My name is Alice Krakauer, and I live on East Mountain Road North. Thank you for holding this hearing. I'm going to speak about noise. I read the noise study, which calculates the expected noise level from the plant at 3 locations, the closest residence and the closest 2 hiking trails. The study concluded that given various attenuating factors, the decibel level at these 3 locations would be between 36 and 39 decibels, comparable to the decibel level of a library. As a layperson, I'm limited in my ability to challenge the predictions of the arcane formulas used, but I do have some lay questions about the methodology. The consultants used an existing cement mixing plant as a model. They measured the noise at that plant as 89.6 decibels at a 50-foot distance, which is the noise level of a heavy truck at 3 feet distance. The plant they used as a model is described in the FEAF as similar to what is proposed. This wording has since been revised to similar in size, configuration, and enclosure. My concern is that the word similar can cover a fair amount of territory, and noise from mixing plants can range up to 103.3 decibels, which is between the noise level of a power lawnmower 3 feet away and a chainsaw. And while the developer has clarified that the mixers will be of the same type as the model plant, they do not specify whether the same number of mixers will be used. Obviously, the degree of similarity of the model plant to the proposed plant is key to the accuracy of the output from the predictive formulas, garbage in, garbage out. Another question is how accurate these measurements and formulas are in predicting real-world outcomes in any case. Cement mixing plants are notoriously noisy. Residents in Fort Worth, Texas, who lived near a concrete mixing plant that worked around the clock were unable to sleep because of what they described as beeping and blending noises and what sounded like a high-pitched saw. The plant in question was in compliance with noise standards. And although the concrete plant being proposed here would not operate overnight, it would start operations at 6 a.m., even on Saturday. There's a retirement community close to the proposed site with around 80 seniors who may not have to get up at 6, 7, or even 8 for that matter any day. But even if the plant does not operate during sleeping hours, these are hardly bucolic noises and would add, or sounds, and would add to the noise of all the trucks already on Route 9. As an aside, I'm curious why the developer agreed to start the plant's operations at 6 instead of 5 if they are convinced the plant will have the noise impact of a library. In addition, although the FEAF states that noise levels will not exceed existing ambient levels during construction, I don't see where construction noise is addressed at all in the noise impact study to which the statement makes reference. I also wonder whether barriers that attenuate sound at ground level will have the same effect for higher elevations nearby.
Excuse me, just to let you know, they have 1 minute left.
Okay, just one more quick point. I know that not all types of air pollution are within your purview, but I want to note that in addition to the diesel and propane emissions noted in the FEAF, concrete mixing plants emit not only particulate matter, but also sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides, all of which pollutants are linked to asthma, lung disease, and cardiovascular issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, come on up.
Hello, my name is Bettina Utz. I live also in East Mountain Road North, so we're just across the Dutchess-Putnam border in Phillipstown. I've been there for 18 years now, and we've seen a lot of increase in traffic, so I'm going to tag on to what's already been said about traffic. I wanted to add that this is also a school bus route. The school bus picks up kids on the bottom of East Mountain Road North, and then on Carroll Lane, it proceeds north and turns around on Clove Road, and then comes back south Route 9 into that area that was previously described as having a short sightline. So once you get over that little hill and around the blind curve, you have about 500 feet to see that there's a truck pulling out, and the trucks are slow or even at a standstill at that point. There's not enough length for a school bus to stop at that point. It's a 55 mile per hour zone. There will be cars behind and in front of that bus, and I see a lot of accidents bound to happen, and I hope they don't happen with a school bus. Even a regular car, if I do the math on this and I go 55 miles an hour, from the moment I see the entrance and I see the truck and I have a normal reaction time of maybe a second and a half, it would take me around 280 feet to stop. Granted, it's perfect weather, there's no other cars there. When does that happen? During rush hour, it never happens. So even for an experienced driver like myself, perhaps, it would be a very dangerous situation. In fact, I just had a very close call in a different area, just a little bit south from that entrance, with a truck that had a trailer in the back, and it was really close. Like, I barely was able to stop. And my daughter is 15, about 16, and she'll drive soon. Here, our neighbor just had a baby. I really don't see that this project can be approved as is on that location for the traffic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Anyone else? Yeah, come on up.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Richard Butensky. I just wanted to say that given the problems that we've raised here, I would think that, and also the fact that there's so much going on that strip of Route 9 already, I would think that some time should be taken to see what the impacts of the very polluting businesses already on Route 9, as well as what this one might present, can do to Route 9 and to a very precious resource in that the aquifer that has clean water to drink for the entire, for the whole region of that area, many towns and wells and systems. So I think there should be, that this board should consider asking the town board to put a moratorium on batch cement plants, and give yourselves 6 months or whatever. I think you can do it for 6 months to take a look and see how these things affect, not just based on what the applicant is feeding you. I think it's time for the town to look into what is going on here and what are the possible impacts of having these kind of industries right smack on top of an important aquifer. So that's my main point here, is put a pause on these things. Thank you. That's the most important point for me.
All right, thank you. Oh, all right, you'll be next. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Tyler Isaacson. I live on Esselborn Road, a little less than a mile from the proposed site. I think my neighbors and the community have said a lot of really impactful things, and I think they've said it well, and it seemed clear to me that the community is not happy with the way this portion of Fishkill and Phillipstown are being developed. And I understand that these issues are, larger than what's in front of us and the matter that's in front of you as this board here. But if these things are to proceed, and if the community's vision is something different, I think the way that we look at approving these projects and the way that we allow these things to happen will have a big impact on what the next year and 5 year and 10 years and 20 years look like for the community. In particular, when I look at this site, I'm concerned with the scale of the impact. I know it's been said, I've read through a lot of the previous comments for the project, that yes, there's a concrete batch plant across the street, and yes, there's the quarry nearby, and there are these other industries here. But again, looking forward as the vision of the community, I don't think we should say just because something is here means something else is okay. In this site in particular, the scale of it is much larger. I see that this application, and I understand that's what we're talking about, is less than an acre, is 9/10 of an acre. But it seems to me from the previous comments that that was done so as to limit the runoff studies that would have to be conducted, because an earlier application asked for it to be 1 1/3 or 1.5 acres, excuse me, or something like that. So if that's the case, and we're meant to just look at this as this tiny portion of the parcel, what containment is actually going to be in place as a part of the plans to ensure that the activities that we're in theory approving here are limited to that 9/10 of an acre that are described in these plans. When I look at some of the other sites that are maintained by the applicant in the Mid-Hudson region, they are on a scale larger, because I believe they contain other things. I understand there's this, affiliated but not at issue mine here, but the footprint is larger than anything else that's in the area here, than any of those other individual plants. So if there's no boundary, if there's no buffer, if the activity is allowed to happen over the entire site, what's to say that in 20 years from now, when they're no longer, soil mining or whatever they're doing, which I understand they have a permit for, they're not interested in just maintaining that, and the priority at that moment is not to begin to reforest the area. It's one of the very few wildlife corridors along Route 9. It's very hard to connect those lands, the Hudson Highlands that border the Hudson River with, the Sharp Reserve and the other wildlands that we have on the other side of Route 9. There's very few places where there's actual wildlife corridors left. So to have such a large disturbance in that area is a missed opportunity, certainly. And then furthermore, I'm concerned about the environmental pollutants and the contaminants, and what could be done to limit those. So in looking at restricting the scale and making sure that it follows the guidelines of the application, has it been asked that the filtration that's in place because of the massive effects that could happen to the water in the aquifer, is it the absolute best filtration? Is the filtration, I do see there's filtration listed at the top of the silos, but is it the absolute best filtration available if we're going to put this in such an environmentally sensitive area? I would hope those questions are being considered. Perhaps the noise is also a big concern for me. Living nearby.
Excuse me, just to let you know, 1 minute, please.
Thank you. Living nearby, when the additional 12 acres that was approved for the nearby mine was approved and was clear-cut, the sound that we hear further down the valley drastically changed. We can hear trucks backing up. We can hear the other concrete mix plant in the area because of the way it reverberates through the area. So I wonder, has the applicant considered erecting a sound barrier immediately adjacent to the site that would contain the activities and could block the sound at the site instead of trying to use far away tree buffers? I also would encourage the sight line. I think somebody mentioned this earlier, but the sight line is only viewed from one place, isn't viewed from the entire perimeter, and it's not clear from those plans what the actual sight lines in the other locations would be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, come on up.
Hi, my name is Ann Lagoy. I live in Fishkill. I was on the Comprehensive Plan Update Committee, as were 2 members of the Planning Board. I know that we put in almost 2 years of work, a lot of work. We surveyed, hundreds of residents filled out that survey and completed the survey and expressed, among others, 2 things that have been repeated here: concern over water and concern over having a beautiful gateway into Fishkill. So I do, we know that you can't deny a project just because people don't like it. However, one of the big considerations is how does it mesh with the comprehensive plan? And I would implore the planning board to really consider how does this mesh with the comprehensive plan. And as we see, and I'm up and down that corridor all the time, and there's crazy driving up and down that corridor, and big trucks are already coming in and out, and I would hate to have the sentiment of, well, it's already kind of a mess, so we'll add to it. I'm sure that you all will consider very seriously the survey that was done, the comprehensive plan update, those types of things, and drinking water for over 35,000 people. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up.
Russ O'Malley, 142 Old Route 9. Good evening, Chairman Cantor. Good evening, Planning Board members. Just a moment. I just want to turn my phone back on. My notes are here. I feel that the residents of Fishkill, the residents of Dutchess County, and in fact the residents of Hudson Valley would be more comfortable with this 310-acre project site if there was a generous, dedicated acreage that would remain undeveloped with public access, specifically the wetland area and the westerly mountainside base woodland. From shrew to fox to bear, from red F to wood turtle to rattlesnake, from hummingbird to great horned owl to bald eagles, all these creatures, far many of them endangered, depend upon this old-growth woodland for food and breeding. In addition, great numbers of rare and endangered species of migratory birds in spring and fall make use of this parcel as food as they make their way north in spring to their summer breeding grounds, and again in the fall as they proceed south to their winter homes. There are far too little undeveloped, pristine, old-growth forest areas remaining in the town of Fishkill, and this parcel is far too big to be lost to development just for more cement. There has to be guarantees that the current proposed development plan, as stated, will remain so, and that a year or 2 or 5 years down the road, this company will not come back with plans to expand operations and destroy more woodland. Is it not true that the Comprehensive Plan Committee's view is that that it is a fact that there are too few undeveloped parcels of green space left in the town of Fishkill? This is truly an opportunity for the planning board to stand by the Comprehensive Plan Committee's green space words of concern and commitment and save our remaining threatened woodland. Thank you very much. And one thing, could I submit a printed copy for the record? Thank you.
Yeah. All right, anyone else like to speak tonight? All right, we don't see any hands up right now. So one thing we will have to do is decide whether to close the public hearing tonight if there are no more people wishing to speak tonight. For one thing, there are several items remaining to be addressed and prepared by the applicant, even according to the applicant's response letter that was submitted. So, I mean, there are some things having to do with the soil testing in the area of the proposed infiltration.
That wouldn't have anything to do with this board, though.
No, let me finish. Structural evaluation of the bridge was actually mentioned by one of the speakers tonight. Revised noise study is one of the important things that's still pending, and some other things. But and so we heard from a lot of people. Ed Bushek, or Bushek, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, actually submitted a couple of emails with some additional comments, and there were also written comments submitted by Michael Beglin and Natalie Beglin. And we have a letter from Madeleine McGinley, who spoke tonight. So, but in a follow-up email, Mr. Bushek requested that the public hearing be continued to the June meeting, ensuring that those not able to attend due to holidays, school vacations, and illnesses and whatever might have an opportunity to comment. So anyway, I always do, I turn to our attorney, Mr. Cordisco, to get your opinion on closing the public hearing tonight, or whether it should perhaps be kept open to the June meeting.
Yes, I think you touched on two of the issues that the board would want to consider in making that decision, and one is the fact that the applicant is still having outstanding responses that this board would want to consider as part of its environmental review for the project. And secondly, you did receive a request for extending the public comment period, and certainly from the tenor of the comments that you received tonight, as well as the number of written submissions that you received, the project itself seems to have a fair amount of interest, and understandably so. And I would recommend that you keep the public hearing open for one more month till next month.
All right. And Dennis, just get your take on, some of the engineering things that are remaining to be done and how that might affect keeping the public hearing open or closing it.
There's, the only question that's really outstanding now, as far as engineering goes, is the soil testing, which I believe the applicant said has been completed. They would just need to update their drainage report to reflect that. But given the nature of some of the environmental, it might be the board's wishes to leave this open.
Yeah, I mean, that would also provide the opportunity for the applicant to respond to the comments that have been made tonight if they want to make additional submission for next month's meeting.
Right. And Liz, do you have any additional comments about that?
Yeah, I just want to add that George Schmidt, our noise specialist, and I found some time on Monday, and we may have to find another time, but I sent an email just before I came to the meeting so that the applicant's representatives can have a conversation about the noise study. They had a number of questions, so I was glad to hear that people are concerned about the noise here at the site. There's still some remaining concerns about pedestrian and bicycle accommodations. There was one sign put up to watch out. I think it was for bicycles for trucks leaving the site. So I think there needs to be more signage. I still remain concerned about the speed limit. I drive this stretch of roadway when I go down to Peekskill, and there are definitely places where 55 miles per hour is just too much. So I don't know if that's something that can be looked at again, what the options are for that. And then we need to pursue sound reduction practices and buffering measures, but we need clearer idea of the noise study and the noise impacts first, and we don't have that yet. I also did have some comments about buffering of the site, and now I'm kind of rethinking that a little bit, because the concept that I had was a 100-foot buffer, but it's all deciduous, and I'm actually concerned now, from what I'm hearing from public commentary, that it's maybe barer along the frontage than I'm aware of, and that also some evergreen buffering might be in order. So there's still a number of concerns that remain to be addressed, and I think it would be good to keep the hearing open.
So we will have further discussion tonight on the project reviews for this project. Any thoughts from planning board members on keeping the public hearing open or closing it? There are thoughts, so what are they? What are your thoughts?
I counted 16 different items. Liz just addressed 5 or 6, but there were 16 items raised here that, in my mind, represent opportunities for the applicant to respond, but also represent things that we've discussed as part of the project plans reviews.
Kevin, I don't mean to interrupt you. Can you move that microphone? I don't think people can hear you.
That we've discussed as a part of the project plan reviews, and really not come to what I would call a resolution associated with some of these 16 things that have been identified tonight. So absolutely, I vote that we keep the public meeting open.
Similar thoughts?
Yeah, I would support keeping the public hearing open, just kind of thinking ahead toward the EAF Part 2 that we'll no doubt have to consider. There were quite a few items on that list that we would consider as part of the EAF Part 2 that, based on comments tonight, could be potentially significant. So offering the applicant an opportunity to speak to those before we close the public hearing makes a lot of sense.
All right. Fred, any thoughts?
Yeah, I have no problem keeping it open.
Okay.
I'm in favor of keeping it open, yeah.
All right, would someone like to make a motion then to keep the public hearing on the Century Aggregates proposal open and continue the public hearing at the June 12th, 2025 Planning Board meeting?
So moved.
Kevin moves it.
Second.
Bob seconds it. Any further discussion?
No.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that motion carries, so the public hearing is going to be continued until the June 12th meeting.
Mr. Chairman, could
yeah,
the
let
applicant
me
be
just,
heard?
Yes, but let me just
Certainly.
ask Debbie or Dominic what that means in terms of we don't need to
I'll let I know the answer, but that's Dominic's forte.
oh
my goodness.
The question about renoticing the hearing or...
You've taught me well, Dominic.
Yes, I mean, since it's a date certain, the project would not need to be renoticed, if that's what you're asking. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
However, John, if you would please change the date on the public hearing sign to 12th, please.
Thank you, Debbie.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andrew Gilchrist, attorney for the applicant. Hearing the discussion of the board members, I did not interject before your motion. It was very clear the board was going in the direction of keeping the public hearing open. Obviously, for the record, I would have indicated One option would have been to close the public hearing, but keep a written comment period open through the June meeting. Many boards consider doing that. Certainly within your discretion to keep the public hearing open, and we're mindful of that. The applicant is not here to ignore public comment, but to hear them and to respond to them. Many issues that were raised tonight we feel we have responded to. We'll provide the information that the board asks. We're mindful of the additional discussion that will be held on the noise issues. We're mindful, and the comments raised tonight were not unanticipated. The board has gone through several rounds of technical review. We've had a number of meetings in front of the board. Many of the issues raised tonight have been addressed, and if we need more information, we'll do that, particularly on the sound study. We know there'll be some more clarification, and we'll work through that. We wanted to note for the record that the issues raised tonight, the concerns of the residents, all legitimate issues, and as I said, not unanticipated. They have previously already been identified in the project review, and we're working through those. Many of them are really technical in nature, and so the board is appropriately counseled with technical consultants, as is the applicant, and we're confident we can work through those technical issues, and we'll work through whatever issues arise during the review. So we're mindful of the continuation of the public hearing. We will address those comments and look forward to continuing working with the board, including this evening. Thank you.
Yes. All right, thank you very much. So, okay. So thank you, all the residents who turned out. There'll be an opportunity for people who weren't able to make it tonight to show up next month, June 12th, I think it is.
That's correct.
And but stick around if you like for the project review. We'll be having further discussions about some of these things, and that'll be in just a few minutes. All right, so let's move on to the next item on the agenda. We have a couple of requests for extensions of approval tonight. The first one is at 1556 Route 52 and 1562 Route 52, Site Development Plan and Special Use Permit. Board to review the submission made by the applicant's representative on April 18th, 2025, which is a request for an additional 6-month extension of the resolution of preliminary and conditional final approval adopted by the board on June 8th, 2023. The board granted the first 6-month extension on May 9th, 2024, and a second 6-month extension on November 14th, 2024, which will expire on June 8th, 2025. All right, well, welcome.
Good evening. Tom Kivett, Gunks Holding Corporation. So we are still going through our DOT and Health Department reviews. We do have an investigation next Thursday into the existing septic system for the garage parcel, and we are still working out the turning details for the site entrance with DOT. Reviews have been a little bit lagging, about 3 months for each review revision, so it's been a while, longer than we anticipated. But we're working through them, and hopefully we'll have a resolution from them pretty soon.
Okay. Any questions from board members?
I'm assuming you got your water approval?
I believe, yeah, that's been.
Please.
I'm assuming you'll get your water approval?
Thank you.
Yes, and sewer, we're also working on that, because those were just installed, so. I'm not on the project for the water specifically, but I know that it's.
I believe you were getting it from the fire department.
Correct.
From the fire department.
Correct. They had brought that over to the fire department, and then they put a spur in the ground for us. So when we're ready, we can connect. They put a stake in the ground for us to be able to find it easily.
Thank you.
All right. Dominic, any questions or comments?
No, they're entitled to the extension, so I would encourage the board to grant it.
All right. All right. Is there a motion to approve an additional 6-month extension of the resolution of preliminary and conditional final approval for this project? That would go till December 8th, 2025.
Jody moved it.
Jody moved it.
I'll second.
All right, Anthony seconds it. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that carries 7-0. Just a sort of, I wouldn't call it a warning, but a flag for in the future. This has been going on for a while, so hopefully this extension will do it for you.
Right, I said that at the last one, I remember.
That's why I said that.
It's a small and complicated project, but
Yeah,
we're working
yeah.
on it.
All right, well, good luck.
Thank you.
And then we have another request for an extension. This is at 62 Greenwood Drive, land development permit. Board to review the submission made by the applicant's representative on April 23, 2025, which is a request for 2 consecutive 6-month extensions of the resolution of reapproval. That was adopted by the board on May 9th, 2024, and will expire on May 9th, 2025. Welcome, Mr. Rogi.
Good evening.
So just give us a quick update on the project and the request.
So the current property owners and the applicants for the original approval and the reapproval are looking to sell the property. So we are trying to keep the approval active during that process. We've already looked into transferring of the approval to a new property owner, and it sounds like that's possible as long as they sign off on the remaining conditions in the resolution of approval. The biggest condition was the bond, most difficult condition to fulfill.
Okay. So the only thing that's pending is the bond, besides the transfer?
Yeah, well, that was the main thing preventing the signs from getting the plans from getting signed the first time around. So I guess the process has taken so long that they just want to sell the property now. So unfortunately, they made it through the whole process up to that point, but it happens.
All right, any other questions from board members? Or Dominic?
No, sir. My recommendation would be to grant the extension.
So one thing I was just going to say, I was thinking about it, again, the proposal's been before the board for quite a while now, and it's not exactly usual practice for the board to grant 2 consecutive 6-month extensions. Just wondering whether the applicants would be okay with a single 6-month extension, and then hopefully it wouldn't be necessary to return again, but if necessary, you could come back for the second one.
Well, we can do that. We just thought it might be easier to do 2 at once, just less things on your agenda, but whatever you prefer, we can do.
Yeah. What does the board think?
Well, I'd rather see it one time and push it, tell the people, get it done.
Yeah, that's kind of my preference, too. So, well, can we get a motion either for a single 6-month extension or 2 consecutive 6-month extensions? Whoever makes the motion can pick which one you want to do.
Okay, I'll make the motion for 1.
All right, this is a motion to approve 1 6-month extension of the resolution of reapproval of the land development permit at 62 Greenwood Drive. That would go to November 9th, 2025. Who would like to move that? Oh, yeah, Fred moved it. Bob seconds it. Okay, any further discussion?
No.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries 7-0. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are now to project reviews, and we're back to Century Aggregates, 107 U.S. Route 9 Site Development Plan. Board to review the submission made by the applicant's representative on April 23, 2025, and to consider declaring lead agency for the project's environmental review. Okay, welcome again, and why don't you tell us where you are with the application?
We made the changes that we discussed at the last meeting with respect to the silo height. We actually extended the roof line over the silos and...
Which one do you want, Mark? Just click on the top.
Yeah.
Princess Building?
Yep, okay. So what we did was we extended this portion of the building. It'll be a three-sided extension. It'll be the two sides on a roof, but the end will remain open so the trucks can get underneath the silos. We feel, based on our conversation with the zoning administrator, that that will satisfy the zoning concerns about that. We generally went through the plans. I do wish to state, I did look at the bridge. There were modifications made to the bridge based on new steel that was put in by the applicant, and we also had done soil testing out there. We did our own testing. The soil is adequate. We are waiting to set up a site visit with the Board of Health so we can log the deep test pits. The soil in the area is, as you head towards the east, is a gravel. Obviously, when you get to go to the west, it's a rock outcrop.
Can I just ask you one question back to the silo height?
Sure.
What is the final height of the silos that you incorporated in this last set of?
We actually show 60 feet, but that's to the top of the dust collector. So the dust collector is actually sits on top of these silos and is about 5 feet tall. So, but we did count that as part of the height.
Okay, so from a sightline perspective, that would be something that you would see.
I tend to doubt you would see it. If you're driving down Route 9 and you look in there, you'd almost have to come to a stop to be able to get a sight line in there. I mean, if you drive in there now, you should still be able to see the pavilion, but I don't believe you'll be able to do that. You would have to come to a near stop to do it. I encourage you to go drive by there and take a look down in the old roadway, and you'll see in the dead of winter you could still see the roof of that pavilion, but you're at almost a stop.
Yeah, there's folks from North Mountain Road that, from their perspective, they might be able to see that. I mean, my point, I don't know what a dust collector looks like, whether it's translucent or is it an opaque kind of structure that sits on top of the silo?
Yeah, it's basically a canister, if you will, and inside of it is, your cartridges bags that collect the dust.
So 60 feet, okay.
Yep.
How far above the roof line?
Sorry?
We're putting the roof line going up.
No, the roof line's going to run the same profile as we were proposing on the original plan. We're just projecting it out past the silos so that if you read the law says above the roof. So we took that.
How much above the roof will it be?
15 feet. 15 feet.
15 feet, thank you. 45, 10.
Okay. I think you were looking for something before that you were trying to tell us.
I didn't hear you. I can't hear you, sorry.
I thought you were looking for something in your notes that you were going to tell us, but...
No, I wanted to point out, you had mentioned that we owe you a letter on the bridge. We do. And as I've looked at the bridge has been modified by the current owner. We had looked at it when the prior owner owned it, and it was satisfactory for heavy traffic, but we will put an analysis together and provide it to the board. As far as soil testing, I'm not sure we could give you our soil testing results. If that's...
Please silence the phones. Thank you.
The letter you were just talking about, is that something that was already submitted?
No. We just took the measurements on it. You're talking about the bridge?
The soil.
Yeah, you said there was some report about the bridge where recent work was done?
No, I'm writing a report.
Oh, you're writing a report, okay.
Yeah, I've looked at it.
Okay, so that will be submitted?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
All right. If that's it for now, we'll go.
Well, I want to go on. We have the noise consultant with us this evening.
Okay.
I think it's prudent that maybe we meet with the town's consultants to resolve whatever outstanding concerns there may be about noise. There is some comments that were brought up in CPL's memo that we really need to discuss. We're asking for signage on Route 9 to warn people about bicycles being on Route 9. Is that what I'm understanding? You would ask for signage in both directions.
So let's get into your memo, but let's answer that question.
You want me to do it now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So the point is that the original comment had said to provide signage about bicyclists and pedestrians approaching the site and for trucks leaving the site. And all I saw on the plan was a sign facing trucks that were leaving the site, which that's progress, but the idea was if those trucks are headed to the site, to be warned about pedestrians and bicyclists.
But isn't that implied as a driver? You know, we all have the rights as a driver to, I don't understand what a sign on Route 9 to warn a truck that there's possibility of pedestrians or cyclists. Isn't that a common, that's what we all do when we drive.
Well, the stretch of road there is 55 miles per hour, and to my knowledge, there was a letter, I guess, in response to a request about reducing the speed limit there. And it basically, the letter came back, there was no name of the person from DOT, so there isn't any, there's no way that a traffic professional could even speak to them about how did that get decided, because the signature is unclear and there's no name under it. You know how you sign a letter and it has your name printed, and then, so there isn't any way of following up on that determination that it cannot be lowered.
I believe at the last planning board meeting, it was discussed that that was no longer an item we were going to talk about.
I thought the town board requested the reduction of the 55 miles an hour, and DOT turned them down.
Right. I know that.
Yeah.
I'm referring to that letter.
Yeah,
I
so
looked at that.
I think, just so there's no confusion, we're not,
Right, but.
we're not looking to reopen that question unless the town board decides themselves to reopen the question, but that's not up to us to do.
Okay.
But I think you can expand on your ideas of why.
What I was trying to say is, being that that is a condition that's in place that can't be changed, the idea here is that any place there can be some warning for drivers, especially at a driveway where trucks are coming in or going out, that warning signs, I think, make good sense.
I beg your
at that
pardon, but
point.
there's driveways all the way up and down Route 9 that I don't see another example of that being asked for or done. I'm just not sure why we would need to do
It sounds
that.
like you're not willing to
Well, it's not
consider.
that we're not willing. What we're talking about is under New York State DOT jurisdiction. This entrance was approved, reviewed and approved by them. So signage would be, I'm sorry.
This is not to be argumentative. Route 9 obviously is a state highway. If the issue is the relocated entrance, which was reviewed a few years ago by DOT, DOT did review that entrance. In fact, did require one sign as a condition to the work permit to relocate the entrance. DOT did not require additional signage, knowing that trucks would be entering and exiting that location. It's really a DOT issue. It's their highway. They did not require that signage. So we feel the issue's closed.
So one question on the sign, that's
Yes.
here.
I apologize.
The one sign that you mentioned, DOT did ask for or approve, what and where is that sign?
There's a requirement for a sign that says they don't want people driving on the shoulder. So that if a truck is stopped, ready to turn in, they want a warning that you're not to drive on the shoulder. And I would say, I agree with Andy's comment that we're trying to find a solution. I think to your point, if we could put a sign on our property facing traffic, but we're not allowed to put a sign on state property.
Okay.
So, if, you know, now that might lose a little bit of the effectiveness of the sign. If it's back off the state's line, we could put a sign in and have an additional warning. So I get the spirit of what you're after, but again, I can't put a sign on state property.
Understood. Then I guess the only option is, I know that the sign warns trucks about bicycles, but not about pedestrians.
Right,
So
and we can change those signs, and
That's an easy change.
an easy change, and I think that also is to your
That
point
sounds
about
like a
the
yes to
sign,
me.
the sign that's exiting the property, that we proposed says only bicycles. I assume we can change that sign so that it refers to bicyclists and pedestrians.
that would be helpful,
Right,
yes.
so we'll make that change, and we can make a change on our side of the property, so we can have a warning on our side of the property, north of the new entrance, warning of watch for bicyclists. And so that'd be a second sign. Obviously, we don't control the other side of the road, so we can't have a warning sign for the northbound traffic, because that's not on our property.
Right. Yeah, I can't remember which, I'm pretty sure it's warns of bicycles now, and then it's a matter of adding the
That's right, so we'll probably use the same sign from both locations. We're just going to post it 2 different spots. One warning the truckers leaving our site, and warning southbound traffic that is approaching our entrance to watch for bicyclists. And
Sounds
so
good.
we'll make that change.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
In relation to that, let me perhaps approach it from a different perspective. I was particularly intrigued by a couple of what I thought were fairly poignant points made during the general discussion here. One of them was apparently some of these folks have taken it upon themselves to do their own analysis of coming around that curve before the new entrance. There's perhaps at 55 miles an hour, a 500-foot sight way through slow trucks coming out. So what I found poignant about that was, what is the potential braking distance, and what's the potential speeds from the trucks that are loaded with the concrete that would come out, and then if somebody coming around that curve, hitting the 500 feet sight line, and what's the braking distance depending on how fast the truck. So that was number one. The other one I found poignant, and perhaps this is just somebody's wish, but the difference between the 36 decibels and the 103 decibels in terms of noise levels, that was perhaps perceived at different cement plants. And there's a significant difference, as we all know, between that kind of decibel level and which ones would be particularly appropriate at various different times of day for this particular plant. So I'd be interested in how you address those without, for example, going back to DOT or asking for some kind of sign relief or something, right? So it's just a couple of, there's some dichotomies here that I'm sure you will address in your response to the public comments.
Right, and Mr. Connell, I guess a couple comments back to that. Back to the site distance you're referring to on the, we have the transportation study, it's in the record, and this goes to the whole spirit of what DOT approved here. I think we're all familiar with the existing entrance. It's basically on a very dangerous curve, very, very limited sight distance. Trucks are coming out of there every day, tractor trailers, people come over the top of the hill at 55 miles an hour, and there's a truck pulling out. The reason DOT wanted it where it ended up is because of the sight distance, and I did hear tonight there was a concern, and I just want to, I guess, keep refreshing people's memory. There was a strip of trees along Route 9 that's north of that new entrance. They were between the power line and Route 9. There was never trees, obviously, underneath the power line or on the inside of the power line, because that's where the mining had taken place. The trees were an issue for sight distance. That was the reason they were requested to be taken down. So now, when you're looking at that entrance, all the way to the top of the hill past the historical monument where that next bend in the road is. So those site distances are just, hugely been increased from the current, current proposal. And by the way, the site distance works both ways. So the site distance of the current entrance, we remember this has been a truck entrance for 70-plus years, is poor in both directions today. And so we're hopefully going to have the new entrance open in the next couple of months, and then we'll be closing that one, and then we'll have a much safer situation. I don't know how technically you want to get on the sound, but I did find it interesting tonight, and I see where your question came from. It was almost, I felt a little bit like maybe we were being, maybe too strong a word, being mocked, but like the sound of a library. But I think we all know this, and this is the best analogy I can give as a layperson for sound. A lot of people make this terrible mistake. They go into the woods, and they think if they get lost, they can just yell for help. And you can yell for help, and it sounds really loud where you're standing. But if someone's not, within a certain distance, they're not going to hear you. And we know about when they do searches, people can be yelling for help, and if you're not close enough, you're not going to hear the person. So the whole layman's concept of sound is that sound diminishes with distance. And so we're talking some very large distances here from Route 9, and Route 9 is a noise generator, right? And we're also, admittedly, in somewhat of a noisy neighborhood, right? We have a quarry across the street, our sand and gravel mine. We have a processing plant very close to Route 9. We know about the concrete plant that's across the street. So it's somewhat a quote-unquote a noisy neighborhood. But the thing that I think, and we can, we have our sound expert here tonight, but we know that basically how far back this plan is situated, the sound level when you get to the property lines that's where the decibel level falls off. And so I heard, and that was a good summary she did. She talked about, 90 decibels, almost 90 decibels, you're next to a truck, you're 3 feet away, we all know what that sounds like. But when you're 2,000 feet away from that truck, it gets pretty quiet. It drops off pretty radically. And I just think that, and one other point, I want to come back to the transportation I thought was very interesting tonight. I respected everybody's comments that I heard, but what happens a lot of times, people make assumptions, and their conclusions are valid, but the problem is the premise, right? They have a premise. The premise I heard tonight was, we're going to increase traffic. Well, part of the record in this thing, this application, is we've done a traffic study. Our whole argument was, we sell sand and gravel today, third party, tractor trailers, dump trucks come in, they pick it up, and they take it somewhere else. The concrete plant, instead of taking it somewhere else, we use it on site, and we have a change of truck. Instead of tractor trailers and dump trucks leaving the site, it's not going to be 100%, there's a trade-off, but we're going to have mixers leaving the site. So there's a change in the truck type. But as far as the argument that, wow, this is going to add a lot of traffic to Route 9, I don't think the record or the application supports that view. It seems to be an erroneous premise. So I did hear the comments, and same thing with the noise. When someone says, I'm going to hear this plant, and I live a half a mile away, it just seems, it doesn't seem the premise is valid. And I think the same thing on the height issue. We heard, we're going to see it. Well, we have in the record that it doesn't appear that you're going to see it. It's too far back, too low, and too far behind screening to be seen. But again, we're open to, I heard these ideas that maybe the screening needs to be supplemented with pines. I think that's a fair discussion. We can have those discussions. But I will say this, just because I look at it all the time, believe me. I look at it, I always wonder what it looks like from a neighbor's perspective. But even, I have to say, I know the leaves fall off, but even in wintertime, when you're driving down Route 9, it's a very, very difficult for someone to be able to see into the campground from Route 9. Most people don't even know it's there. Even when the leaves are off, it's very hard to see. Very, very, because the forest is so thick. It's so much forest to that area. So that's, I just there's a couple points, because like I said, I actually stepped out of the room because a comment was made here tonight about us dumping water onto a neighbor's property, and I have spoken to this neighbor. I had never met them before, and that was the first time I stepped out to talk to him about that. And I had to clarify for them, when we put the new entrance in, DOT made us put a pipe extension. There's a pipe that goes under Route 9, right in front of Carroll Lane. And the reason for the pipe extension, because it used to just come out from under Route 9, the shoulder, and just dump into the ditch there, and it went down to this neighbor's house. It's not our water, it's from the other side of Route 9, and all we did is put a pipe extension on it. And I just went out to talk to him, I said, I gotta correct you that, and I offered him, I gave him my business card, I said, please give me a call, I'd love to walk this with you, I'd like to go walk your property too, because you're saying ever since we put this new entrance in, you got more water, and that doesn't make any sense to me, because it's not coming off our property. In fact, DOT required this, and DEC, the highest point of our new entryway is Route 9. They're requiring that when that rain falls, every ounce of water has to go back into the mine. They don't want any water coming the other direction. So the high point of the new entryway is the shoulder of Route 9, and everything is pitched back into the property, so water doesn't come off. So those are things, but I think we'll obviously look at the record. We'll look at all the comments made. We'll respond to it formally. But it was, again, and I do understand there's probably a very strong emotional reaction people have, and again, I look at the concrete plant that's on Route 9 that they're talking about. It's not very sightly. I think we're going to be building a very modern, enclosed concrete plant. It's not going to look anything like that.
Okay, thanks. So Liz, let's pick up with going through anything else in your memo, CPL's memo, that you would like to cover now.
Okay. So just, as I said, George Schmidt and I, we've reached out. We've offered Monday afternoon, but that might not work for you folks. And so we'll keep trying to figure out a time so that we can go over any questions you have.
You said it wouldn't work. It works for you guys?
It does.
Okay.
1 p.m. or later. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay. 1 p.m.'s good? Okay. So that's one thing. I know that when I was reading a lot of the public comments today, I thought it might be helpful for the planning board, and again, weigh in here, with all the comments, if there's a way that you can provide responses from the applicant's perspective about those things. And I think sometimes what will happen is certain kinds of comments can be kind of grouped together and then a response provided. I think it would be helpful to the board and to the public and reviewers.
Yeah, I took
as well.
notes, so we'll respond to the items that were brought
I think
up.
that would be helpful. Let's see. We talked about the signage. And I guess maybe we can talk about sound reduction practices and buffering measures when we're talking about the sound report. I know that in response to prior comments, there was a concern, and I kind of stepped back and look at it, about conservation or deed restriction being proposed. And I think the concern was probably where there was discussion of retaining vegetation, there's a huge swath of deciduous. And so I revisited that and came back with a comment that was approximately 100-foot depth of retaining the deciduous, figuring that that would serve as kind of a visual screen, especially given that the terrain drops down a little bit. If you think that it would be worthwhile to add some evergreen, I guess that's a possibility. And I don't know how the board feels about that.
But also, just mention, I think we're less thinking about something like a conservation easement or deed restriction, and going more with like notes on the plan, on the site plan, to indicate a certain area would be
Right.
specifically preserved.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear, but that was the whole point, was...
It's in the memo, but I just
Right,
wanted it for the public
I appreciate
record.
that.
Right, and if we could be heard on that. We understand that if technically required, and I'll expand on that in a moment, certainly a map note that would be part of the public record, it'd be in the building department office, quite frankly, then it would be part of the site plan. If the board were to approve it, that's an enforceable condition to the site plan.
That was the concept.
That's the concept, and we would support that. Again, if technically, and that's going to be a technical issue. The board is aware of this, but I'll just repeat it again. What is being proposed here is a fairly limited area on the full parcel, 310-acre parcel. Little under an acre. We'll call it an acre for discussion's sake. That's the site plan that's in front of the board. If there is an impact rising to the level of a significant adverse impact associated with that proposed 1-acre use, that would warrant that kind of map note or condition, that's subject to review and discussion. But it really is a technical issue, and I think when the consultants meet on Monday, it is in connection with both sound.
No, it was a visual.
So sounds
I
off the board.
hadn't...
It's a visual impact assessment, then
Yeah.
maybe it'd be appropriate
It was a
to take-
visual concern, that was
Well,
the
maybe it
reason.
would be appropriate then, while you're there, and I know Mark will be there, to also take a
We're
look
going
at
to
the
be
line of sight.
online. We'll just, it'll be an online.
That's
meeting.
fine, but however
Right.
you're going to meet, to take a look at that line of sight profile and have some discussion on that as well.
Okay.
You know,
We understand the
hey,
concept.
When I brought that up, I was concerned about a fire and it taking down the brush and whatever was there, besides just the burn itself. And if it went down, then it's going to be more visible from the road. And we'd like you to just replace it as best you could.
I'm sorry, did you start by saying fire?
I said if there was a forest fire.
Oh, understood.
Or some sort of disaster that took down the trees and the shrubbery that's there, which is blocking it. And we would like it to be replaced so you wouldn't be able to see.
No, that's understood, and that's why we understand the comment and the
Okay.
issue. That's why in the line of sight profile, I know it identifies trees, but take a look at that, we ask you a little further, because there is that berm in the front from Route 9, and whether those trees are actually creating the visual barrier, the vegetative barrier, or not, that's subject of further review and technical discussion.
Understood. The issue had more to do with that in the response last time, the idea was, we talked about the berm, but there was definitely a reticence to do anything to ensure that the berm would remain, or if it needed repair, et cetera, et cetera. So there's nothing on the plans that speaks to what you're talking about. It's just verbal. So,
All right,
so
so that can
so
be
there's
further
nothing
addressed.
Yeah,
That
that's
certainly-
it. There's nothing that
We can
ensures
further address that.
what we're looking at, which looks good, but isn't permanent. It isn't part of the proposal.
Understood, but
It's just showing
again, what's in
what's
front of the board is that just, we'll call it for discussion purposes, 1-acre site plan with the entrance road.
Mhm.
If there is an impact that arises as a result of that proposed 1-acre development that requires mitigation, it wouldn't necessarily be shown on a site plan, correct? But it's viewed as you need to berm an area to avoid a visual impact. Well, then that's an issue that can be addressed as a mitigation measure.
Sure,
Yeah.
as long as it's, indicated
record.
as something to be kept.
Oh, understood.
That was the issue.
Needs to be addressed and in
Right.
the record, so it becomes an enforceable condition.
Like on the map, that's the idea.
And the berm had to do with visual and sound buffer.
Right, because it's a decent height.
Mhm.
But so.
Understood. Thank you.
Anything else you wanted to point out, Liz, from your memo?
No, only when we'll do the noise stuff first, because George
On
doesn't.
Monday, you mean, or?
Yeah, and, because George doesn't need to stick around for the visual. That's not his specialty is noise, so that's all. And then, I don't know, some of the comments are repeated. I don't know if you had questions about any of the comments, but I guess we could talk about that.
No, we'll talk about it at the meeting.
Okay. All right. Dennis, would you like to go over MJ's memo?
Yeah, going over a memo dated May 2nd. A lot of the comments have been addressed. There was one or two repeat comments that we had. One, which we kind of touched on, was the structural evaluation of the existing bridge, which sounds like that's going to be forthcoming. And then the second was the soil testing, which it sounds like it was done. So they'll have to revise their stormwater report to reflect that. I just want to note, it was brought up at the public hearing that, the disturbance is under an acre and it won't need to get coverage under the DEC permit, but it still will need to meet all of the town requirements. And there's also, since it is on a sole aquifer, there are additional requirements that would need to be looked at. So I just want to let the board know that, yes, it won't meet the requirement for the DEC, but we will be looking at it, and especially with the aquifer in mind with that. And then once that's submitted, obviously, there will be more comments on that.
Where in the technical discussion will the issue of the potential chemical throw-off of fly ash and other type of typical chemicals associated with this process, where would that be addressed? In the soil test?
That would be under the environmental. That'd be part of the seeker process, and that would be discussed as part of CPL's review.
Yeah, to maybe answer your question, there, in the concrete batch plant building, there is going to be a depressed pit. So when the concrete trucks come back and they're washed out, that material goes into the pit. The pit has, basically the solids will settle out and the water will be reused to make concrete in the batch plant above. And the material that's left over will actually also be recovered and reused in the concrete mix. As far as any of the admixtures, there's really nothing in there that has any kind of contaminant. Fly ash is basically, it's not a contaminant. It's basically a form of lag or basically dust. But it will be recollected from the washout and reused in the concrete batch plant.
Do you have any idea what the potential escape percentage is from that?
Well, there really is, there's no way, anything that's mixed on site and then trucked out is done obviously in a mixer. So at the site, when you're, say, pouring concrete foundation, what have you, there's what they call a washout area on the site where the concrete's washed out of the truck, because you really don't want the truck coming back with concrete in it. And what's left in the drum is washed out in that batch plant where that recovery takes place, and that's in a concrete pit. So barring any catastrophic unknown, I don't believe you'd have a release.
I think that this particular point, the way you articulate your response to the comments here will go a long way
Okay.
towards potentially alleviating people's concerns.
We could do that.
Good point, Kevin.
I know that I had a question early on that was answered about water and whether any of it was dribbling out. And the answer that I got, and correct me if I'm wrong here, was that water that goes into the mix, that goes into the truck, most of it leaves with the truck.
With the truck.
Because they have to keep it moving. If it
Correct.
dries, it's a big problem, so.
Correct.
Okay.
We did note in one of the letters that we received today, someone had mentioned about the use of 10,000 gallons a day. Want to point out, Fishkill actually takes about 1.5 million gallons a day out of the aquifer to supply the municipalities. So we think this is fairly de minimis compared to 10,000 gallons over a day, 1.5 million, which is approximately half a mile down the road. So Clove Creek's it's a pretty substantial waterway. I mean, there's considerable amount of water in that. 10,000 gallons probably passes one cross-section of that creek every minute or so. It's such a wide and deep creek.
And I think also the septic system you have is pretty minimal. It's for one bathroom.
Correct.
So,
Any other questions from board members?
Yeah, I think this project could be a good candidate for like a monitoring system. I know for other projects in the past, we've had noise monitoring being done before construction and after construction, at least for one project that comes to mind. Could that be considered, here a noise study before and after completion, a monitoring or sampling of Clove Creek before and sometime after, air monitoring at certain points, maybe doing air quality sample from the residences nearby and maybe a year after, something along those lines to at least, we can say a year after it's here, that there are no substantial changes. Of course, we'd have to figure out, the specifics of it, the scope of it, what we would be able to do possibly as mitigation based on the results, but I think that could be something that we can consider.
And again, I think we would need to wait till the applicant has an opportunity to respond to some of those points that were brought up during the hearing and see, see if there's any technical information that would tend to...
We would welcome that, of course.
Tend to either make monitoring a good idea or make it sort of irrelevant.
Absolutely. I think there's more information to come, but just based off of the comments we received today, just something that kind of came to mind. I know we had done the noise, factored in the noise study on another project before, so that's where it came from. But yeah, welcome the information from the applicant.
Okay.
I think I might, before George gets onto the meeting, have him listen to the video just to hear the points about noise, so he's aware of it.
So one thing we should do tonight has to do with lead agency designation. So the 30 days required has passed now since we circulated the notice of intent. And so I'm assuming it would be appropriate for the board to have a motion declaring that the Town of Fishkill Planning Board will serve as lead agency to conduct a coordinated environmental review under seeker for this proposal. Dominic and Dennis in particular, do you agree with us moving ahead with that? Even though I know CPL's memo indicated that there are, several things still pending that kind of prevents us from moving ahead with seeker determinations yet. That's something that we can and should do. So.
Certainly.
All right. Would somebody like to make a motion to that effect?
I'll do it.
Was that-
I make a motion.
Making a motion?
No, I was actually about to ask a question, sir.
Oh, you want to ask a question before we?
No, wasn't there something from the town of Phillipstown asking them to?
Yeah,
add to this?
I'm going to bring that up in a second, but that's not going to stop us from doing the motion. All right, so who made the motion? Fred makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Anthony seconds it. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So we are the lead agency. So, yeah, the letter that Ravi is referring to came from the chair of the Phillipstown Conservation Board, stating that they would like to be included as an interested agency. So now that we're the lead agency, we can include them as an interested agency. And they go on to say in the letter that the proposed construction of a concrete batch plant within the Clove Creek aquifer may have significant adverse impacts that reach beyond town borders. And the Conservation Board is apparently concerned that the proposed usage of, I think that's where you got the 10,000 gallon figure from, 10,000 gallons a day could potentially deplete the aquifer. And that processing of concrete could contaminate the aquifer from improperly managed runoff. So that's their letter, basically. They didn't actually submit that for the public hearing, so we've kind of recorded that in the project file, and we'll certainly keep them apprised of what's going on with this as an interested agency. But, any comments you could provide in response to that letter as well regarding the aquifer would be helpful.
Okay.
And if I can just add, the more explanatory you can be in your responses, I think is helpful to the public understanding.
Oh, I'm sorry, say it again.
The more explanatory you can be in response to the public comments, I think is helpful for the public to understand things.
Yeah, it always is.
Well, the one thing I was going to bring up, or a lot of people brought up traffic, but we've submitted a amended traffic analysis as part of the beginning of this project. I'm not certain if they have access to that, or I know someone commented they read it, but
It's all online, Mark, just so you know.
yeah, so it's all there, but there is, a lot of the comments were brought up, which I don't think anybody really understood, is when the revised study was done, a lot of gaps open up because of the entrance being located to where it is now on the south side. There's anywhere between, I believe, 8 second, 9 second, 11-second gaps, which we don't have where the entrance was before. I just think that I'm going to refer back to that report so that people understand it, that it was done, and we didn't do it in the blind. So.
Yeah, and any of that technical information that you think would help
Yeah.
to understand how the traffic operates would be a good idea.
Yep, we're going to add that.
Okay. One last thing that I was noticing was in the plan set, the company business sign that's going to be relocated to the new entrance. There was a detail in the plans, but it kind of lacked any details on the lettering and the colors. In fact, I think it just showed a blank sign.
It's actually the existing, that sign exists up
Yeah.
at the other entrance, will be relocated down there.
So in the plan set, can you simply put, an image of that
I
in
show
there?
a photo.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all. So any other questions or comments for now? I think we've made a lot of progress tonight. All right. Okay. Well, thank you.
Hi, I'm Brian Mullen, Strategic Bonding Solutions. I did the noise study. Could I request...
Could you speak a little more directly into the mic?
Sorry.
Thanks.
Could I request a site meeting as opposed to an online meeting? I think it would go a long way, especially with the discussion on the ambient sound levels, if we were actually
Oh, okay.
on the
Well,
site.
the only time slot that I had set up was with George to do the noise. So maybe we do a separate thing, and George won't be part of that other meeting.
Okay.
So we could set something up on site.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So we'll do the noise one at 1 on Monday, and then let's get back in touch about doing an on-site meeting.
Okay, so we'll do 2, I think. 2
Yeah,
meetings then. Okay.
yeah, because the sound one will just be, I had intended it to just be online. It's kind of a time saver, just so we could have a chat with Mark and whoever's dealing with noise for him.
That's me.
So, yeah, let's, Mark and everybody there has my contact information.
Okay.
And I don't know if you want to leave a card.
Sure.
Okay. Or you can just shoot me an email and we'll follow up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know he has that.
All right.
Okay, so there's noise and line of sight.
Okay, so we're going to move along to the next agenda item. Thank you for coming.
Thank the board as well. Thank you. See you next week.
So the next item is Fishkill Self-Storage, 1292 Route 9D, Site Development Plan and Special Use Permit. Board to review the preliminary FEIS, which is Final Environmental Impact Statement, which was submitted by the applicant's representative on March 26, 2025.
Hi.
Welcome, Mr. Glad. How are you?
Good evening. How are you?
Good. So what I think we're going to do is just start off right out with asking Liz from CPL to go through the memo and the document that you prepared. And I know we only just got it late yesterday, so I'm sure board members haven't really had a chance to sink our teeth into it yet. But why don't you kind of give us an overview of what you submitted to us?
Okay, and do you want me to talk about the procedural memo aspects of that? Okay.
Really starting with the memo. And
Okay,
then,
good.
Then as much as we can get into the
Yeah.
other document.
All right. So in the memo that I gave you, the cover memo, it's kind of explaining the process. And the long and the short of it at this point is the board has been through the process of looking at a draft environmental impact statement, and then agencies in the public and my office made comments about that, and the applicant has taken all of those comments and come back with a preliminary, or draft, or whatever you want to call it, but preliminary final environmental impact statement. And so I have looked at that and compiled comments. The first round was just looking and seeing what kind of comments I had and writing those up. And the second part of it, and due substantially to Jonathan making the recommendation of getting the the preliminary final environmental impact statement chapters and kind of blending the documents so that the planning board could follow along. So that was kind of the second part of the process. And so ultimately, what I will aim towards on behalf of the board is to end up with a document that substantially, ultimately states the board's position on things and ultimately leads to a possible decision-making document. So it all needs to be from the perspective of the planning board as a lead agency, but with all of the input from the public, the applicants processing that, and the board taking a look. And you may have your own comments. So ultimately, the preliminary final EIS, when it's revised, will be hopefully closer to what you need to move forward in your decision-making. So I did point to a few things in here, and I also gave you a link to Seeker if you want to read that. I tried to give you guideposts on how to approach this rather hefty document. And keep in mind that this document consists of portions of the draft environmental impact statement, all of the prior comments that were made, they're all woven in here, and the most recent responses. I also tried to provide you kind of a guidepost about where to look. So the DEIS comments, theoretically, you've seen those before, and so they're numbered a certain way, and I tried to indicate that those were DEIS comments, and they're just in regular font. The newer comments, which I'm calling CPL PFEIS comments, I've tried to make the ones that you really need to look at in bold so that they stand right out. One of the difficulties I had with the format of this is that it makes sense, the way that the applicant had prepared this document, for them to do the comments from the public primarily, with CPL's comments in there, but they're kind of batched in issues. And those needed to be presented right up front. So for example, when you're looking through this, you're going to have several pages which are responses to public comments. And then eventually, you're going to get to a page where you're going to see follow-up comments from me, but you're going to go down quite a ways. For example, The first time you see a bolded comment from me is on page 23. And so what you're going to be looking for is the bolded text comments. There's for example, a heftier one on page 27. So this is kind of the process you may have to go through. Some of this I talked to you about in the memo. I tried to explain to you, what are you looking for, how is it presented, and how do you find the most current CPL comments. And basically what I can tell you is, when you're looking through the document, is to look for bold text. For example, I'm looking at CPL PFEIS comment 2, and it's a few paragraphs. And so if you can go through and look for those are the newest things. Those are the things that are saying that we need more answers or more information in response to those comments to be able to move forward. One of the things that I also wrote about in this memorandum is to try to come up with a kind of a timeline. Let's see. Hang on a second, I want to find this comment. Okay, on page 2 of the memorandum, comment number 9 says, the planning board should discuss a timeline for review of the comments prepared by CPL. And again, I know this is a hefty document, so I want you to be realistic about what can work for you. And then I would try to turn the revisions around as soon as I have your comments. So those are a couple of my concerns. How much time the planning board would need for review. And just by way of example, I know it's a hefty document, but at least you know you can look for bolded text, which are the newest bits in here. That I wondered whether or not, if there were 2 weekends, would that, like say a 2.5-week period, would that possibly give the board enough time? So that was part of what I was thinking. I don't expect an answer on the spot, but we should communicate about it sooner rather than later, because then we can figure out the rest of the timeline for revisions based on your comments. And I think those were the main points. I don't know if you want me to talk a little bit more about the format of how the DEIS is, the preliminary FEIS is presented. Just a quick walkthrough.
I don't think so.
Okay, fine.
I do want to talk a little bit later about some of the formatting kinds of questions, but before we get into a little bit more of that, I was wondering, Dominic, if you could give us kind of just a simple, as simple as possible description of where we are with this FEIS, how we would proceed, what the next steps are going to be, that type of thing.
You know, unlike a draft environmental impact statement, and pardon me for, the DEC in its wisdom when they named these documents using draft, and the fact that we have, what we call now a preliminary FEIS and all of that. What we really mean is that we have a document that's been prepared by the applicant, which hasn't been adopted by the board at this time. And the key difference between a DEIS and an FEIS is that the DEIS is prepared by the applicant, according to certain things that have to be included in the document that's established by the board, but it's the applicant's anticipation as to what the environmental impacts are and what the proposed mitigations are. And so the board at that point, when you have a public hearing and you deem the DEIS ready for public review, doesn't mean, as I said earlier, doesn't mean you agree with the statements that are contained in the DEIS, because they're prepared by the applicant. The difference with an FEIS is that the FEIS is actually this board's response to the comments that you received at the public hearing. A little nuance here is that the initial draft of it was prepared, by the applicant, which is standard. Most applicants, prefer to take the initial effort or crack at preparing an FEIS, because of course they are also in a position to respond to those comments as well, and they may make adjustments to the project, which is exactly what the seeker process is supposed to entail, which is identification of issues and mitigation of those issues as the process unfolds. And here we have, an FEIS, which at some point will have to be adopted by this board, because it will be your statements as to what your collective decision is in connection with environmental impacts associated with this particular project. Is that general enough? Or
Yeah.
yes, there are timeframes involved. It's one of those points in seeker where the timeframes are rarely met. For instance, an FEIS is supposed to be adopted by this board within 45 days of the public hearing. We are well outside that timeframe. There's no default approval for that, and of course, where an applicant, undertakes their own initiative to prepare the initial draft of the FEIS, then you are obviously waiting for the applicant to do so rather than doing the document on your own initiative. That said, I think that there is a obligation from the board and the board's consultants, which I believe you're meeting, to timely review the FEIS once you've received it. This one is fairly voluminous, as well as having a large number of public comments and public concerns regarding the project, as well as concerns from the board and the board's consultants. So I think that given the facts and circumstances, you certainly aren't in any kind of default or any undue delay associated with this particular FEIS. But I wonder what the next step would be, and I would like to hear from the applicant as to what their intentions will be to, either work with the planning board as lead agency to make sure that the document addresses your concerns, or whether or not this is something that should really be deferred to the board at this point, for revision to to bring it to closure, if you will.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask, and so I would like to hear from the applicant on that. But first, I wanted to ask you, Dominic, what your experience has been at the stage we're in now. What most commonly or typically happens? Does the lead agency kind of take it in and start working on it ourselves? Is that common?
Yes, I think so. And certainly for other large and high-profile projects, as I said, the initial legwork is done by the applicant, but at some point, the board and the board's consultants take that document over to make sure that it actually reflects the board's opinions as it relates to all the responses. As I said, this document, is broken down by comment and then response. To be clear, the responses, once this is adopted by the board, are your responses.
Right.
They're not the applicant's responses.
Right. Yeah, so would you like to add a few of your own comments about where we are?
Sure, happy to. So as far as like document structure and order of comments, we're certainly happy to work with the board to reorganize it if Liz wants to see some changes, and I think the most efficient way to go about that would just to put our AKRF in contact with you. So if you want the comments and responses organized in a different fashion, we're of course happy to do that. But we did spend a lot of time on our responses, so I think at this point, substantively, it's appropriate for the board to be putting it in, rather than us respond and try to come up with something, and then you disagree, and then, we're just kind of in this cycle of still negotiating these points about some of the substantive responses when I think at this point, it's
And
important
I
that we
know,
move forward.
I know that Aaron was kind enough to provide Liz with the Word document
That was
of the
very helpful.
FEIS. So, I mean, what I would like not to see happen is that kind of back and forth that you were mentioning where, who knows how many rounds of our comments on your comments, back on our comments it goes before, and we might not ever even get to a, mutual understanding of exactly how the FEIS is going to end up. So it is, as we've been hearing all throughout this discussion, it is definitely the planning board as lead agency's document. The question is procedurally, how are we going to move forward with getting that document finalized, which then, my understanding is, will form the basis for moving into our findings, which we haven't really talked about too much, but that's, the FEIS, in my mind, is going to have to be something that will support whatever the planning board's findings are going to be.
Absolutely. The findings have to be based on the record that's been established in both the DEIS and the FEIS. Correct.
And then the findings will then in turn become the basis for whatever the board's ultimate decision is going to be regarding the proposal.
Correct.
So I don't necessarily want to put out a proposal right now unless our consultants think we should, but I'm just thinking one of the easiest ways to really get this document, the FEIS draft document, in a shape that the planning board will be able to easily understand and manipulate and move in and out of, is by doing something more in the way of kind of a track changes kind of document, using the Word format, which allows you to modify a document by showing red line deletions by strike-throughs and red line additions or changes through boldface underlining. Because to tell you the truth, and I talked to Liz about this earlier before we received the document that was distributed, I was having a lot of trouble. I haven't had a chance to go through the document in a lot of detail yet, but a lot of trouble just figuring out, like, there are a lot of cross-references, and then back and forth references, and the further along this would go in terms of back and forths between the planning board and the applicant, the more complicated it would get in terms of commenting, responding, and before you know it, it's like totally impossible to figure out what's going on. So I'd like to get some feedback from the board, not so much on the substance of what CPL's comments have been so far, but on the formatting of what you would like to see moving forward, what would be the easiest for us to be able to work with. So that was kind of my suggestion, idea to get it into more of a track changes kind of a format instead of a less clear way of trying to find things.
I have one additional suggestion. Maybe this makes sense, or maybe you prefer not to. But since the applicant does now have the benefit of having Liz's latest memo, that perhaps they want to take one additional stab at revising the document to the extent that they can make the changes that they believe that they can make as a result of that, and then it be turned back in, and obviously in track changes format, but then perhaps, Liz and the board could take it over from there, because at least the applicant has the benefit of having Liz's latest memo. I'd offer it as a suggestion, but obviously, however you'd like to proceed.
Yeah, well, kind of in tandem with that, can our consultant talk with Liz so that we can give you a document that's formatted the way that you want it to look to help speed up the time?
Yeah, we had authorized that kind of
Okay.
communication
Just
for the
wanted to make sure.
DEIS, so I don't think we need to reauthorize it unless the board would like to, but I think that's kind of an ongoing part of the process, or it could be an ongoing part of the process if you think that would help.
Yes, yeah, I do. So I think, immediate next step is for AKRF to get in contact with CPL and, make adjustments to the formatting and respond to any that, we think we can at this point.
So it's kind of hard to even ask this question on timing of that, but whether that could be something we might be able to see for the June meeting, probably not, but maybe. I don't know what your reaction is.
No, I think we can.
So we could shoot for that.
Yeah.
Can we get it more than one day?
That's going to be up to Liz.
Which day would that be?
Well, 128 pages, I received, read it, tried to read it this morning, didn't get it.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, what the expectations are of each one of us. I took a look.
Very high expectations.
I looked at the business document, and I spent 3 hours going through the document, the first 20 pages, just with the cross-references. Looking up when Liz says you might be familiar with, well, I went back to the town
Number 10.
rules and regs and looked up that particular reg, read it, tried to make sense of that, and I never got to page 23, where your first bold comment was. And there's, as you said, 126 pages. So I found it impossible, as you pointed out, you found it impossible as well to make headway through the document. And I read the executive summary, I went through the memorandum, and frankly, my own personal perspective of this particular project has not changed, even with all of that information that I've tried to glean. So, and I would like to get to the point where I think I have enough information that I can say, there's an aha point where I can now make a decision, a conscious decision, not just based on environmental impact statements, but on a broader perspective as a community member.
Well, yeah, and there's the environmental impact perspective, and there's also the technical parts of section 150, 19D, and in terms of the substantially similar test with the criteria that the board will have to consider. Some of those are more environmentally impact related, and some are more zoning issues.
That's correct, but they are intertwined.
And they are intertwined, and that's why the FEIS has to really deal in a clear way with all of that together.
And support ultimately the board's decision.
Right. So,
That's the aha moment that I'm looking for out of the document.
so that's why we're looking for a way to make it as easy and clear as possible for the board, and the public for that matter, to be able to navigate through this document, because it's going to be a really important document in terms of whatever comes after. So I think the suggestion of the back and forth discussion between CPL and the applicant to get it in some kind of a easier, more understandable format, and then to address those items that are addressable, at this point between the applicant and CPL, and then get it back to the board, hopefully in a somewhat more clear document.
Yeah.
That would be the goal.
Certainly. So, yeah, we can get started on that right away.
Okay. Any other thoughts from board members while we're talking about it? Any other direction for Liz at this point that you could talk about? The one thing I'm looking at in particular, and I know this will probably be not so much an agreement between the applicant and CPL and the board, is the zoning administrator's opinion memo that was submitted that is also addressed in the preliminary FEIS. I know for myself, we're going to have to be very careful and clear on what our own opinion is, and in many ways, in my own mind, that's going to have some contrary thoughts from what the zoning administrator came up with. So that, I'm not putting that burden on the applicant, because that's obviously going to be very much up to the planning board to do, but that's just, I wanted to mention that's something that I'll be looking at very closely. But if there are other things that other board members are thinking about that you know, that are going to weigh heavily on your decisions, certainly feel free to let Liz know about it, either now or even over the next, week or so. We can have, at least through this coming weekend, if you have a chance to look through the document a little bit more, let Liz know if you have any thoughts, and then they can kind of use that when you do your communications.
And just to be clear, I know that I got it to you a day before this meeting. I'm very aware of that, which is why there were comments in there about a timeline for review to see if the planning board had any comments or questions about anything in the long run, understanding that it needs to be formatted. My understanding had been that the record kind of had to be in there. In other words, so there were DEIS comments that the response was fine, and so those are just kind of in there as part of the record. So I would also like an opportunity to have a little consultation with Dominic about, the format of the thing, too. That would be very helpful to me, because I think I have specific questions that maybe you could answer that would help me.
Yeah. Happy to.
Yeah, that would be great. All right. Any other questions? Does it sound like we're moving in the right direction? It's a direction, right?
Yeah, it's some direction.
We'll see if it's the right direction or not. But no, I think it'll be good to see what you can come up with together, working with the applicant, Liz.
Absolutely.
And I think probably the next step will be whatever that document looks like for the board to take it on as our own document and to start working on it to get something that we'll be comfortable with. Okay.
All right, sounds good. If there's nothing further, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, what's next?
The next item is Fishkill Medical Park Site Development Plan, Special Use Permit and Subdivision. Board to review the submission made by the applicant's representative on April 23, 2025. Welcome, Mr. Kane.
Thank you. And welcome. I'll try to keep this short this evening. We did make an application on the 23rd, highlighting a couple of changes on the project. I think probably the biggest change is we are working on our sewer line and the connection from the project site into the municipal sewer system And based on consultation with DOT and with the County Health Department, and now with the Village of Fishkill, what we're proposing is a direct drill underneath I-84, so leaving the property on the north, heading under I-84, under the ramp, and ended up at a manhole in front of the old Holiday Inn. So we stay in the DOT right-of-way the whole way. We don't, originally we were thinking we had to go into Route 9 and disrupt traffic and intercept a force main there. But this is a much more direct route that DOT and the Health Department, the village, everybody's happy with. So our sewer will just go straight underground directional drill and not disturb anything. Pops up out of the ground about 10 feet from the manhole, and then you just tie into the manhole. So
you're going under 84?
Under 84. Under the ramp. Under the ramp, yeah, right. So that's, again, it's project details, and we're working again with all the reviewing agencies on getting the details together on that. As part of that process, DOT did ask for some updates on the traffic report, and we provided those to you as we provided them to DOT, a new traffic impact study. There were some details added, but the report's findings didn't substantively change. So with the proposed mitigation, the traffic remains good. We updated the SWIP to reflect the 2025 permit changes as the state changed some of the permit requirements. We had some tweaks there, but again, no substantive changes in the design criteria for treatment of the stormwater. So we're still really down to one big issue, and that's waiting for the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation to get back to our response on the cultural resources on the site. So we made a big submission to OPR, and they have the regulatory 30-day clock in which to respond to us, and that was due like the day after the submittal date to the town. So we thought, we'll go ahead and submit. We should get the response back from OPR, and it'll be circulated, and everybody can see it.
Not yet.
OPR made a mistake. They admit they made a mistake. They have an obligation to notify tribal nations of the report when there's the potential for Native American sites or artifacts, and they forgot to do that. So it pushed the clock back. The tribal nations also have a 30-day response. That now expires on Saturday, the 10th. So the OPR will not release their comments until the 30-day clock has expired with the tribal nations. So we got put into a little bit of a holding pattern there. So what we ask the board is, to consider, again, if you would consider authorizing the preparation of secret documents for review. I assume we're going to get comments back. If we don't get comments back in a timely manner, then obviously we would ask to not take your time at the next meeting. Wouldn't make any sense if there's nothing to review at that meeting. But in the hope that OPR will follow up on how they're supposed to proceed, we'd ask that you would, again, consider authorizing your consultants to prepare the draft secret documents for review at the next meeting.
All right, well, any questions so far on that?
No, it sounds good.
Well, let's go to our consultant's memo. So Dennis, do you want to start off with MJ's memo?
Going through our letter, we just make note of the seeker, that it's an unlisted action, that the board has initiated coordinated review on that. We made note of the GML requirement. We had one note about the subdivision, that it will need to be prepared and signed by a surveyor. As you had mentioned, I guess the bigger issue, or not big issue, biggest change on the plans was the sewer force main. So we were just looking for a little bit more detail. It sounds like he had already engaged with the DOT. We were just looking for a little bit more detail to make sure it's feasible when you're doing, I guess, depending on what method you're using to do the directional drill, receiving pits, making sure that it's feasible to do what you're proposing. With that, we had, again, with the DOT, you're going to have to get a use and occupancy permit through that, but it sounds like you started that already. And then you kind of hit it before, some minor comments on the SWIP, but nothing major. Mostly, I think it's just notation. So overall, engineering-wise, I think they're pretty close to complete.
Okay, thanks. Any questions on that? All right, Liz, how about CPL's memo?
And yeah, we're kind of honing down. I tried to give a summary of what the result of the most recent cultural resource reports was. And, you know, that's still ongoing, so we're still waiting for a response on that. And then I tried to go over the view shed analysis and provide the board with my thoughts on that. And I basically gave my opinion on the visual impacts. In my professional opinion, the conclusion on page 62 of that report about visual impacts are supported by the narrative, maps, and illustrations. So at least that's one area, in my opinion, that's relatively addressed, pending whatever the planning board thinks about that. And then the DOT is asking for things like traffic analysis changes. Anyway, we're really kind of boiling down to the point where there aren't that many areas of impact, and that's why at the bottom of page 5, I suggested that, you know, again, pending a SHPO sign-off, that the planning board might consider authorizing preparation of draft full environmental assessment form parts 2 and 3, and authorize preparation of draft secret determination of non-significance. And obviously, we don't have the SHPO sign-off now. So that may be something the board may want to hold off on. Alternatively, I would just work through everything but that area of impact.
Yeah, so how would we suggest that you approach at least the Part 2 EAF draft
right.
without knowing for sure what we're going to get out
Exactly.
of SHPO? It would be very difficult in my mind to do a draft neg deck, for instance, if in fact that one issue came back as a possible significant impact, and that's all that would be needed to perhaps trigger some further,
Agreed.
environmental review.
Yeah, and that's down the road now even.
But
Could
I know-
I make a suggestion on that particular point? I don't want to interrupt, but
I guess my thinking to finish that thought is that perhaps we could authorize CPL to prepare simply a draft EAF Part 2, not 3 and not a neg deck at this point. Because we've done that before, where we've had that document ready to go, which then could be plugged in, leaving out that one item if that information weren't available. And in fact, if that it wasn't available, hopefully we'd know early enough. Yeah, the submission deadline would be, it's normally like 15 calendar days prior to the meeting, so.
You mean the next meeting?
Yeah, for the
Right on the
June.
agenda, hold on one second. That would be May 28th, which is a Wednesday.
So hopefully we would know by then if the SHPO sign-off was received. If not, we would probably just agree with you not to schedule it for the June meeting and not have CPL go ahead with the Part 2 draft at that point.
Right.
Once we knew that, because normally you'd be working on that like that following, sometime during that week after the submission deadline, I would think.
Yeah, because there's really, I mean, we're really down to just a few comments, except for this, the SHPO sign-off, so. In other words, wait for the next submittal, see if the SHPO thing is there, and then, if it is, I could do just the full EAF.
Well, I guess my suggestion was,
I'm not in a rush, I'm just.
My thought was the description of the potential impacts are in the documents as submitted. So we know what the impacts are, right? So we know what the impacts are. We know what we've proposed as mitigation, right? So all the information relative to the environmental impacts is already in the record. SHPO doesn't add anything to the record. SHPO just agrees or doesn't agree. So the record is what the record is, and so SHPO reviews it and makes their opinion. So you're in a position where all of the information relative to the Part 2 and 3 and the neg deck really already exists. So the question is there SHPO concurrence? I think that's the outstanding piece.
Well, but that's kind of like saying, does the planning board anticipate that there would be potential significant impacts or not on any item? And that's basically up to the planning board to decide. SHPO
Absolutely.
is a similar agency on a different level, but if they look at the same facts that someone else is looking at and come up with a different determination, that's kind of what we have to go with. So that's what makes it a little bit more difficult than it sounds.
Understood.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I thought that some of the conclusions in what was submitted had to do with additional studies to be done.
Sure.
Additional levels of.
Right. The proposed mitigation, there are anticipated impacts, and then you mitigate the impacts. So there is proposed mitigation, which does have what's called a phase 3 study, and that study then ultimately gets reviewed by SHPO.
Right.
So that mitigation, like any mitigation, like you don't do your traffic mitigation until you're actually under construction with the project. So that mitigation, cultural resource mitigation, doesn't actually get done until you're under construction with the project. So that is a post-approval mitigation, as mitigations are. So yes, there is another, it's called a study, but really it is because with cultural resources, your mitigation ends up in studying the artifacts, if any, are discovered, so.
But are you
Dominic, how's this sounding to you? It's a little more complicated, I
Yeah.
think, than it's.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I've also often counseled that, a draft could at least be prepared, and whether or not the board adopts it, having that material available is something that could fall into place as far as this is concerned, but I defer to the board.
You're talking about the EAF Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I'd be comfortable trying to answer the historic resources part, but all the rest of it.
I think,
yeah.
I think at this point, my suggestion would be to leave that blank.
Right.
Until you hear from SHPO. But the rest of it could at least, guide the board.
So that's the question for the board. Should we authorize, at this point, the preparation of a draft EAF Part 2 without the rest of it?
If we
No.
leave it blank,
Yeah.
when can we insert it?
Well, the insertion may or may not happen before or at the June meeting, if there's no response from SHPO by that time.
But, okay, so we leave it blank, but if it
Leave it
comes
blank.
in, even if it comes in at the last minute,
Well, when you say the last minute,
come in by
the
the
last minute would be
I don't
before
know.
the submission deadline, not before
Oh,
the
you're-
meeting.
Okay, well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
28th, yeah.
Yeah. So that would be kind of the cutoff date.
We would
If it doesn't come by
appreciate
28th,
that,
then
right?
you
Yeah.
want it in
Why
the
don't we just
agenda.
do that? And we just.
Right, if it
hey,
doesn't come by the 28th, it wouldn't even be on the agenda, and we wouldn't ask Liz to then go ahead and do the draft EAF Part 2 if we knew by the deadline submission date that we weren't getting SHPO's
Right.
sign-off.
Then there's really no point in doing it.
But it's just that if we felt that an authorization pending hearing from SHPO in time for that submission date were helpful, we'd have to do that tonight. We'd have to authorize it tonight. That's the question.
And then I would just wait until after the deadline to even bother.
Okay,
Right.
that's that's your suggestion, yeah.
Right,
I think-
on that particular piece, on the cultural resource piece, and the rest of it.
No, Liz is saying, Liz is suggesting to the board, don't authorize the preparation of the EAF Part 2 on that basis.
Oh.
Isn't that what you were saying?
No.
That's what I
I
heard.
thought it was saying,
Do it.
if you do authorize me to prepare it, I wouldn't even touch it until after the submittal deadline.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so that's different.
And
from
then
what
I
thought
would
you were saying.
prepare it, but just leave the SHPO part blank, if we don't have the SHPO thing.
No, but what is the use of preparing if you're not going to consider it at the...
Yeah, see, that's the
Okay,
the
that's
key-
up to the
That's
board.
the key part of it, is
Okay.
if the SHPO response does not come before the submission deadline,
There's no sense.
we would then
That's
have
what I thought
to,
it
if
was
we
saying.
authorized it tonight, we'd have to then unauthorize it and not put it on the agenda for the June meeting, which to me implies, in my own mind, let's not even worry about that for now, it's just premature.
Sounds good to me.
Unless anyone has any other thought, I don't think we should talk about this too much longer. Okay.
So I'm confused. So you were going to authorize it, but now you're not? Is that what happened?
Well, I was never going to authorize it. I was trying to get some certainty from the board members and from Liz, and I don't have that, so.
I don't see any benefit in authorizing, that's what I'm saying. If the SHPO doesn't
Yeah.
come, what is the benefit in authorizing?
Yeah, the only benefit is if it did come by the submission deadline, and that left Liz enough time to put like the full, the full draft EAF together, that would certainly speed up the process for making a decision.
And that might be a good suggestion to make, is that if SHPO provides their response, and they can get that to the town prior to the submission deadline, then the board could consider a draft Part 2 EAF prepared by Liz at the June meeting.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't come, then no document is prepared, I think is the direction that the board is considering.
So we're back to that, eh?
I don't know. Yeah, or whatever you'd like.
I'll defer to opinions by the board, because I already weighed in on my opinion. I think it's a bad idea at this point to move ahead with an authorization, but if anyone feels strongly about it, we'll be happy to hear your motion.
I was just trying to help the applicant along, that's all.
Yeah, I know.
Months make a big difference, and I understand the position you're in, and I'm frustrated by OPR, and I recognize you are too, but months make a big difference to us, so if
Yeah.
you could see your way through, we'd appreciate it. That's all.
So I'm not hearing a motion, because I'm not making one. So, okay. We're not going to sit here for 30 minutes waiting for a motion, so I think that's it.
So, thank you. So assuming we get the response from OPR, my intent would be the only thing I would submit is the OPR response to then be on the June agenda, or, I mean, do I need to, is there anything else that, in particular, that consultants need to see before, in that submittal to move ahead?
Well, if, it looks like if you did get the SHPO response by the submission deadline, that would be kind of almost a single agenda item, so that we can then at the June meeting authorize. And perhaps here's where the efficiency might be able to occur. If that happened, the board could authorize not only the secret documents, and then we would know most likely whether it would be a neg deck or not, as well as perhaps a draft resolution of preliminary approval for the project for the July meeting. So then you're kind of...
Yeah.
Doing those together would be more efficient.
Yeah, you might not be losing time, you might be able to make up that time.
Thank you. Right, okay.
So moved.
Now you're making motions.
No motion necessary.
I do appreciate the consideration, so we will, I won't take any more of your time, we'll push SHPO. Thank you.
Jeff, do you want to mention at all about the meeting we had with the supervisor, mainly?
Well, now I do, right?
Mainly about the question of a, possible donation from the applicant, which...
Sure.
Yeah.
So, the chairman and myself and Joe Kirchhoff from Kirchhoff Acquisitions met with the supervisor and talked about the project, and there were a couple of items on the table. One was the question of helping to establish a fund for the town to do sidewalk improvements. Supervisor wasn't a fan. I think that, I'm not to put specific words in his mouth, but didn't think that was the right way that he thought the town needed to go, and didn't necessarily see the requirement for this project to fund that type of program within the town. So we thought it was a good idea, not something the town was particularly interested in, so we moved on from that. One of the things that did come out of the meeting, and this goes back to one of the earlier questions that the board has asked, is there's an interest in the town to take the undeveloped land that's part of our application that won't be built on, and so the town would then ultimately own and maintain that. There's a number of technical details, I think, that would be worked out over time, but it was a good conversation and kind of an interest in the future about how to make sure that land is preserved. I think as part of this application, it's still shown as and notated as land not to be developed, and then as we continue our work with the town board, I think in the future. The town has an interest in taking it. We don't have an issue in not giving them that land, and that's something that can be worked out more as we again in the future.
All right. It's positive development.
Yeah.
Good, thanks for that.
All right. All right.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right. The next item is 300 Westage Hotel Site Development Plan. Board to review the town engineer's memorandum dated April 23, 2025 regarding the stormwater pollution prevention plan, traffic impact analysis, and supplemental traffic impact analysis. And the submission made by the applicant's representative on April 23, 2025. So Liz, I think we're losing you for the rest of the night, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all your assistance.
And I hope your meeting doesn't go too much later.
Now you do.
Nah.
Thanks. Goodbye. Good night, Liz.
Don't say anything else about
See, she
that.
did it.
I'm not.
So, welcome.
Hi, good evening. Karen Lobruto from LaBella Associates, here for Riverlink Hotels for 300 Westage Hotel, proposed at 300 Westage. Excuse me. We received the most, received the most recent comment letter from MJ. And just to kind of summarize it, there were some comments on the SWIP, mostly to bring our SWIP, or the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, in better conformity with the formatting of the new general permit. They were not substantive comments. They were mostly about just making sure it aligns well with that permit and the things that need to be addressed. There was a review of the traffic impact study. There were no improvements suggested. There was a finding of concurrence with the conclusion, which is no significant adverse impacts. We do continue to seek the parking waiver and are planning to be in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals on May 20th for the rear yard variance and also for the signage variances related to area. The public hearing was closed at the last meeting in April, and we respectfully seek that you authorize the consultants to begin preparing the seeker documentation. Thank you.
Thanks for the update. Okay, so Dennis, MJ has 2 memos, so why don't you
Yeah,
just...
we have the 2 memos. They did a pretty good job of summarizing everything, but I can go through it. The first one is dated April 22nd. Going through the SWIP, as I mentioned, we made comments about bringing everything up to the new general permit requirements. There was, we do have a comment on there about a maintenance agreement and easement to the town of Fishkill. There's some additional notation that we're looking for, but overall, the SWIP, we're in general acceptance of the SWIP, minus those things. As mentioned, the traffic study, again, we are in agreement with everything that was provided. They did provide the parking assessment. Again, we're okay with everything that was provided, noting that everything right now accurately was based on the existing post-COVID kind of way life has become with the hybrid of people working at home or not going into the office as much. We did make a comment that, while we're in agreement with that, the board may want to take into consideration if it ever goes back normal, what kind of impacts that would be if and when that could happen. But overall, we're in general agreement with both the SWIP and the parking and traffic. And then our May 2nd comment letter, again, there's some technical things that we note in here, the seeker, the GML, the need for the Board of Health approval, but overall, the plans are in pretty good shape. No major comments on either the plans, the SWIP, or the traffic comments.
Okay, thanks. Any questions from board members?
Nope. I have one in terms of RTO. The study, the parking study was based on current practices rather than full return to the office parking requirements. Is that what I'm hearing?
So the parking analysis undertook an existing conditions count of the parking demand at 75% occupancy of the office building as it is today. But in order to ensure it was a conservative analysis, it was projected up to 100% occupancy of the office. We then looked at the requirements for the hotel and the requirements for the office, and we compared that against the demand, the parking demand for the hotel, the parking demand for the office, and looking at their shared parking requirements. The highest peak parking period saw a requirement of something like 238 spaces, and we are providing 250. So we will be providing that, and it's, with some extra spaces.
So
now, with
the 238 that would then be based on the projected 100% occupancy of the office with the requirements for the hotel.
Leasing occupancy, that's correct. It also took into account, we counted as parking demand a row from 400 Westage, and we didn't include it as our parking supply. So when we were out there counting used parking spaces, we included those from 400 Westage, but we didn't include it in our parking supply. So that was also conservative.
So, Dennis, I'm not sure I understand what she's saying is that they projected 100% occupancy at the office.
and use that projection in conjunction with the hotel requirements to come up with the 283.
That was assuming a full-time office attendance by the,
Well, no, it was based on the attendance of that day. You know, we can't confirm whether everyone was in attendance at the office. But we pushed it up to 100, yes.
Okay, so
I find that's acceptable. I don't have an issue with that.
okay, so parking is not a problem. Only when it snows. Just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're asking for a waiver. We're in agreement with that waiver, and, you know, I don't think that there's going to be an issue. We'd be in favor of the board granting that waiver.
Yeah, one thing I'll just mention, I've been going over to that area fairly often for other reasons, and I keep checking the parking situation in those lots. And every time I've been there, and it's not like once a week, but maybe once every couple of weeks, there seems to be pretty heavy usage of the nearby parking spaces, and in sometimes even within the area of the proposed hotel site. So there are cars that are sometimes using those spaces now, where they're coming from, whether they're employees of the 300 office building or from even other parts of the business center. I don't know. But so I don't think it necessarily is a problem or an issue, but I'm just surprised to see that that area does seem to be fairly well used. So when we come down to it, the board will have to, make certain findings for the parking waiver that we are being requested to give. But, we'll be able to look back at the parking study to make those decisions, and taking the advice from MJ Engineering. So, I feel comfortable overall. It's just that it's probably going to be pretty close in terms of the parking situation. So we certainly don't want to end up with this situation where there isn't going to be sufficient parking with the new use.
How do you, when you make the thing of 100% occupancy, how do you base your thing of what you think the use of these parking spaces are by square footage of what's available still and so many people in the building at that point?
Well, so, it's purely a count of what's happening in the parking lot, right? We don't know what's happening in the office. An office use, it is an office use all throughout 300 currently, so it's not like they're different land use types. We know it's an office use. The office use has a certain required parking ratio. It has a certain parking demand calculation by ITE. But in this case, we simply counted the number of parking spaces, knowing that the office building is 75% occupied. We don't know, how many people may have called out sick. We don't know how many people may have been in or out of the office. But we did project to, control these things that we don't know, these uncertainties. We did project up to 100% occupancy, assuming the whole office building is occupied. We also included that row of 400 as people seeking to park in our area, whereas they weren't included as part of the overall supply. So
you're saying that your possibility of 400 spilling over
Yes.
into you?
Yes.
Yeah, because I could definitely see that. 'cause
Yeah.
I go to the medical office in the
Yeah,
back.
yeah, 400 is a lot of
It's going to be,
That's where some
it's
of
going to be interesting.
some of that
Yeah.
spillover seems to be coming from.
I'm just wondering how they were coming up with some kind of thing of how many people are going to be in. You could have somebody take a certain amount of space and there's only like 12 employees, or there's going to be 35 employees, but it gets us, there's a way to, I guess they can come up with some kind of ratio. I'm just wondering how that worked. Okay.
Well, generally speaking, parking demand for offices, it's dependent on the amount of square footage or the number of employees. And generally speaking, they say for offices, there's one employee per every sorry, there's three employees for every 1,000 square feet. So
Yeah, I know
I
there
can give you
was
some idea.
something like that, I
Yeah.
know. That's why I was asking, how they came up with that.
Yeah, the other point here is that it was a shared parking study, so you have the office use, that's predominantly, the parking demand is in the AM, through the day to the PM, and the predominant peak demand for parking for the hotel is off time from that, so you're.
Mind me too asking, like, so when you guys are at, let's say, 100% occupancy, like, you got to figure, you don't know, like, how many, if, like, in some rooms, somebody might have 2 cars or 3, somebody visiting, seeing people, and so how many spaces are you guys saying that you're going to possibly use? I forgot because I read something.
I'm sorry, I don't have that level of detail
Okay.
right now,
All right.
but it is in the parking study.
Are you expecting the hotel also to be 100% occupancy, when you calculate the parking?
Yes.
Yeah, so in reality, the hotel likely won't be at 100% occupancy all the time, all year round.
Right.
You would like it to be, but it probably won't be. And certain events or, regional things that are going on will tend to fill it up. But maybe that's a good question to ask. What, from your experience with these types of hotels, is your typical, say, monthly occupancy? Is it 90%? Is it 70%? What is it usually?
At the Hampton, we're about 75%. We're hoping to be right around 75, 80%. And the other thing I was saying, that office is usually, like she was saying, AM to PM, and then our guests usually check in after 5, and they're usually gone by hopefully 7 to 10 in the morning, they're gone.
Is there a difference in occupancy percentage weekdays and weekends?
Weekends are usually higher, in this area, definitely.
And obviously the office wouldn't be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's sort of the concept of shared parking tends to be able to accommodate those types of shifts in your occupancy rates, especially with a use as different as an office building with a hotel. So.
Are you also, like, participating, like, like, while you're getting the rooms and stuff like that, is like West Point people or Maris or, like that kind of thing? Because, we do have a few.
Usually we get, like, obviously graduation, those weekends, but usually it's more government-related business that stays longer term, but not really West Point or Maris or anything like that.
I just had a couple of things. So at the last meeting, we did mention the need for a material sample board with colors, materials, et cetera. I don't think that's been submitted to the planning office yet, has it, Debbie?
Actually, we did just receive it, and we have it, we could bring it in.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, is that all right if they leave it with you? Or do you want it?
I'll just have to give Pete a heads up, because somehow we got to show it on the camera if we're going to discuss it.
And it also depends on how heavy it is.
I can't take a big board, I can tell you that's not happening. I barely have an office.
Well, at least we have a cart to carry stuff on, right? We can help you with that if need be.
I'm not carrying it, it's just storing it. That's why I have small boards.
Yeah.
We just don't have the storage space in the town anymore.
Yeah. But it's definitely good to get them and to see what the materials are actually going to look like. So meanwhile, maybe I should wait on this next question. I think I had something else too. The monument sign details. So they're shown on sheet C531, I believe. But it doesn't show any color, really. It labels materials, but it doesn't show any colors of the sign. So we would normally ask for a color rendering of that particular sign.
Okay.
And then, so I guess the applicant is in the process or has already made a submission?
They've already submitted their ZBA application. They'll be on at the next meeting, which is Tuesday night,
Tuesday night?
for acceptance and referral. And then it'll come back to this board, of course.
Yeah. Right.
And to the county and many others.
Oh, here he is. Oh, that's not, yeah, that's not that big.
fine.
Yeah.
But it might be heavy.
Yeah, do you want to?
If you want to maybe show it in front of the,
Oh, maybe right here.
I think that would be perfect.
Move it around.
You can do it.
Yes. You're on camera, so.
So, obviously, this is the green that nobody likes.
So,
If you see, so this brick color and this brick color is the first floor.
Just hold still, he said, please.
What's
Just kind of hold still.
for a few seconds. So, yeah, you want to go ahead and describe them?
Right. So the two brick, I guess, material is one is the middle where the dark portion is that.
The elevator bank.
Yep.
Oh, that dark.
This area here.
Yeah, that dark portion is the.
Yeah,
No,
that-
no. This one right here.
Oh, sorry. This area here.
Yep. And the lighter one is.
And the lighter one is this one, okay.
Yeah. And then the rest, these two are just the majority of the Aegis color.
And you still have that green color in there.
We're trying.
It's, all
Where
right.
is the green going?
It's,
Yeah, that's on one of the, that's on one of the other drawings, I think.
This
Oh,
line
at
right
the
here.
top, okay.
Oh.
That right
Yeah,
there.
Very top.
And that.
it's not very much.
I know, it's not much. Okay.
It's just.
Well, it's a strip going down that whole,
And the top portion of the building.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The column.
That's what you're calling the Home 2 Suites brand iconic green color.
That's what it's called, iconic green. That's exactly what it's called.
So I'm hoping you can
Yeah. We're trying.
get that to be some other color that's a little bit less obtrusive, let's say, to put it kindly. I did notice, actually, that the rest of the colors in the building elevation drawings seem to have been toned down a little bit from the previous version, so I appreciated that. They seem a little bit more naturalistic. That's why that green, in a way, almost becomes even more out of place.
I know, but like, if you go to the one in Poughkeepsie further down on Route 9, or the one in Middletown, it's just, it's their iconic green, it's their brand.
It's their brand.
differentiation.
Yeah, but from a customer's perspective, it's not likely that the customer is looking for that iconic green. It's more the business that wants to have it.
Understood.
So oftentimes, the planning board is able to work with an applicant to address these kinds of things, to perhaps find an alternative
I will
iconic
show
color.
a video and I will show Hilton what you just said, so hopefully they'll listen to it.
And also, especially since the other colors have been toned down, something that would more match those toned down colors would be appropriate.
So does it have to be a different color, or could it be a different shade of green?
Be Kelly green, my name will come.
Your shirt.
Well, you can get some more naturalistic green colors, like forest green or something like that, but, you know, I don't know how compatible that would be with this current elevation drawing. We'll leave it for you to work out with the parent company to see what you can bring back on that.
They wanted a color rendering of the monument sign as well.
I will get that.
Yeah, yeah. So that the submission is already made now to the ZBA for the variances, so Is the monument sign one of those that's going
Yeah,
to the
so
ZBA?
what are the
Yes.
ZBA variances you're asking for?
Yes, for the size of the front and back size of the monument sign.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
So is there a color rendering in that package that went to the ZBA, do you know?
I believe so, yes.
Because we'll be getting that
Oh, as a
referral
referral.
from the ZBA, so if
Okay.
it's in there, that's,
Yeah. One thing really quick.
Go.
That green,
Using color? The PDF has colors. It doesn't spell them out, but it does show
I think I
them.
was looking on the hard copy sheet.
The hard copy
Which was
probably
black and
didn't have
white.
it, yeah.
It may not have.
there's
Okay.
one thing I won't be able to change as far as the green.
Okay.
It's how the 2 is outlined in green, which is on the sign and on the building. That they won't change.
Well, at least that's a little bit less obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
I'm going to try to do this the rest of the
Yeah.
thing, but
Yeah,
that they won't go for.
I think that would be a good compromise. Okay, wait, so that shows what that monument sign will look like. So, yeah, hopefully we'll be getting that referral, well, not hopefully, but, yeah, right.
I know.
Okay. Good. Yeah, so, please.
Thank you very much.
Oh, so the next question actually is, and you had mentioned this before, I think we're probably in a position where we could authorize preparation of draft EAF parts 2 and 3, and perhaps a draft neg deck for the board's consideration at the June meeting. Do you think we're there?
I would, yes, if the board feels comfortable, we can do that. I think the outstanding comments that we have are technical in nature. I don't think there's anything that would prohibit from the board from reviewing that.
Yeah, what does the board think? Does that sound?
Sounds good to me.
All right. All right, would somebody like to make a motion to that effect? EAF parts 2 and 3 in a draft neg deck at the June meeting?
Second.
So did Jody move that?
And Bob.
She did.
And Bob seconded it? Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so I think we're all set for the night? Good, thanks a lot. All right, well, we're gonna keep moving unless, yeah, I don't really want to take an official break. So, the next item is Fantozzi and Cabrera, 1613 Route 9D and 1611 Route 9D subdivision and lot line realignment. Board to review the amended application and the submission made by the applicant's representative on April 23, 2025. Welcome back. Good to see you again.
Hello, board. Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Nick Caesar. I'm the engineer for the project, and we have Mr. Ben over here as well. So last time we were involved in this board meeting, it was in April of 2024. Since that period of time, we received a letter from the zoning administrator in January of 2025 suggesting that the project was as of right and no variances were required. Since that point in time till now, we've made another submission, which has been reviewed by the municipal engineer. Just a quick overview of the project. This is the existing conditions, which is a single lot, roughly 2.4 acres. The intention of this proposal is to subdivide the rear of the property into this lot here and subdivide the front portion of the property into this lot here, which would support a single-family house. This lot back here is an existing has an existing nonconformity, and we're basically going to intend to subdivide this, and then this property is going to be combined with this rear property. So that's a general summary of the project. Yeah, open it up for any comments or suggestions.
You're going to 2 lots or 3 lots?
So.
Got 3 houses?
Yeah, what'd you say?
You're going to have 3 houses?
No, so the end state is you're going to go from 1 lot to 2 lots, but in the interim, there'll be 3 lots created, and then the rear lot will be added to the adjacent lot in the rear. So at the conclusion of the event, at the beginning, there's 1 lot, at the end, there'll be 2, and the back lot here is going to be subdivided and added to this back property. The issue is that the rear lot, the neighbor, over the course of history, constructed some features that are actually on this property. So the intention is to try to improve that nonconformity by subdividing this lot into 3 lots, of which the front would be an additional property to be constructed, and the rear would be added to this adjacent lot.
Right, so that rear Lot 3, I guess it is what we're referring to as a lot line realignment.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, which is what the board asked the applicant to do as part of the subdivision process.
Yeah, so at the beginning, we added the adjacent property owner to the application, so now Mr. Fantazzi and the adjacent lot owner are on the application as one transaction, and a 3rd lot will not actually be created at the conclusion of the event. It'll just be added to the rear lot as a lot line adjustment. There will be a new lot created in the front, which would support a single-family structure.
So initially there are 2 lots? I mean, right?
Initially, there's 1 lot. This is the lot here. So initially, there's 1 lot. We're going to cut this lot into 3 different sections. The rear section, this is section 1, this is section 2, and this is section 3. The rear section will not remain a lot. It will be added to this adjacent lot. This will remain a lot like it is now with a house on it, and this will be a new lot.
Okay. And all 3 are going up 1 driveway, or one common driveway, or?
1 and 2 will have the same.
Yes, so currently, this lot that exists here and the lot in the rear are served via 1 driveway with an easement. The new lot,
We'll have an off 9D, their own entrance?
no, the new lot will also use the same driveway.
So all 3 of them are going to use the same driveway?
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions before we go to MJ's memo? You want to go over that, Dennis? Oh.
No.
No.
No, they
To a house.
Yeah, the lot in the rear needs to be created in order to be added to the other property. It's not really being created, the line's just being moved.
Yeah, that's what we're calling the lot line realignment. It's basically a merger of that Lot 3 with the back house.
Yeah, so this area here
Yeah.
is getting merged with this lot.
Yeah, that is getting merged, and the original lot is getting divided into 2 now.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then lot 1 will be new construction.
Correct.
All right.
Okay. Going through our letter, the seeker, note that this is going to be unlisted action. We list all the involved and interested agencies. Part 3 here, we have a couple of comments on the EAF. We note that it's going to be under an acre, so there's not, it's not subject to the DEC requirements, but they still need to do a stormwater report. We note that it's going to be a technicality. I'm on the EAF, just note that it's going to be private water and septic, on-site septic. There will be, it comes up as a archaeological sensitive area, so you'd have to get a letter from SHPO. Also, it did come up as area that contains or could contain endangered species. So again, correspondence from the Natural Heritage Program for those two. As far as the plans themselves, it's pretty straightforward. We had some minor comments on that. We note that obviously you need Board of Health approval for the septic and well. There are some minor comments on the grading on the driveway. We make note of that. And then the entrance is going to remain the same, but there's going to be some modifications to the existing entrance. So that would need to get a DOT approval.
Can I comment on that real quick?
Sure.
So there's going to be no changes to the existing entrance? Just a point of clarification.
Okay, just looking at the plan, it looked like it was getting a little bit wider to make.
No, so like if you look at the survey here, it's basically, it has like an apron, you know, probably 40-foot apron entrance that's all gravel. So we're not changing that here. The intention is that this driveway and the curb cut doesn't change, not trying to go to the DOT, and then this property here is accessed through this driveway and then via an easement.
If you're not going to change, then you can disregard that comment.
Okay.
So let's see, what number was that?
That, number 9.
Okay.
I would just, I mean, they're an involved agency anyway, so if they would have comment on that.
Well, they may or may not be an involved agency. We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
And then lastly would just be to update the easement for the rear and for the other parcel that you're creating. So that's it.
A question I had was, you mentioned that as a result of it being less than an acre, there's no DEC-specific stormwater analysis that's provided, but you mentioned a stormwater report. Is there anything specifically you want to see on that?
There's, if you go through in the town code, there's the stormwater section. I don't know it off the top of my head. I can forward that information, but there are requirements for that. Basically, it's a watered down Speedy's permit, not Speedy's permit, SWIP. So there's it's basically pre versus post.
Gotcha.
But it is spelled out on the in the code.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. And if you have, feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Or I guess if the board wants to.
Yeah. I was going to ask later if there was going to be a need for the applicant's engineer to communicate directly with our engineer, so we might want to authorize that kind of direct communication.
Yeah, that'd be valuable.
We can do that now, actually. Is there a motion to authorize direct communication between the applicant engineer and the planning board's engineer?
So moved.
Was that Anthony?
Yes.
Is there a second? Is that Jody?
It is.
Further discussion?
No.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so there's that. Any questions for Dennis on the memo, or any other questions for the applicant?
The road maintenance agreement? Driveway maintenance agreement?
Yeah, I think that was provided as for the existing driveway and the
We could
relationship.
have somebody else being added to it.
Yeah, so that could be updated. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
I think.
Yeah, that was just one of the comments that we had in our memo.
Yeah.
Okay.
About updating the maintenance
Yep.
agreement with the driveway.
Number 12 on page 3,
Yeah,
yes.
the only other question I had was comment number 14, which requests for construction details of all design features, including septic, et cetera, et cetera. So, with the need for the project to go back to the health department to get approval for the septic, all those construction details would be dictated by the health department. So
Yeah, they would just need to be included on the plan.
at the end, right?
Well, you're gonna need them, you're gonna need to get Board of Health approval.
And then we're gonna have to come back, yeah.
Yeah, it would be one of the conditions of final approval.
Yeah, so I'm saying we can include those things after the health department, but not before, right?
I mean, you can include them, but you're gonna need them, you probably should submit sooner than later to the Board of Health.
I guess what I'm saying is, there seems to be some items that we need to make for a revised submission to this board, and then we need to go to the Board of Health to clarify all those things that they're going to dictate, et cetera, leach fields, et cetera. Then we need to take their final approval and submit it back. That's when you're going to get the construction details.
Yeah.
Not before that, though.
Yeah, but I would recommend starting now with the Board of Health.
Yeah.
Prior to.
So we already started with the Board of Health. We got approval for a section of the leach field, and we already did all the soil tests for this leach field. And basically, the guidance from the health department was we need to get generally through the planning board from a trend perspective that the planning board is okay with the process, and then we go back to the health department.
Well, one way of doing that, which for a basically two-lot subdivision would be a little unusual, doing a preliminary approval first, then not doing final approval until health department approvals. But I imagine we can condition a final approval of the subdivision on obtaining that kind of information from the Department of Health.
Yeah, that's basically what the health department said, is that they need a pseudo-conditional, correspondence from the planning board so that they could even review a subdivision proposal.
Yeah. So we've often done, I think, conditional final approvals requiring the submission of the Department of Health.
And we already got favorable feedback from the system, but they just said you got to go to the health department and then come back.
Yeah. It's just that there are time limits for filing a conditional final approved plat, and sometimes the health department is a little, let's say.
Yeah, usually if you go to the health
timeline.
department, they'll issue, I mean, basically if you go through and get everything approved, they say everything's approved barring the site approval from the board. So it's kind of
It's a chicken before the egg.
yeah.
So that's already what
So,
happened. They said-
okay, if you could submit that letter, I mean, that's fine, and then just include whatever details they have on there, so it's all on one plan. If you feel free to give me a call if you have any questions.
Will do. I don't have any other comment.
You just have a couple questions on procedure.
Okay, yeah, come on up.
Good evening, I'm Ben Gailey from J&G Law. Just in terms of the seeker procedure, I'm assuming on a small project like this, and there's only the one involved agency, which is the Department of Health, now that we've eliminated DOT, that you don't coordinate review?
So we can get to that now if you like.
Sure.
So, yeah, MJ, the memo indicates this appears to be an unlisted action, so do you concur with that, Dominic?
Yes, sir.
And we can do an uncoordinated review. Coordinated review is optional, right?
Correct.
I think in this kind of a case, we've often done uncoordinated reviews, as you're mentioning. So would somebody like to go ahead and make a motion to classify the proposed Fantozzi and Cabrera subdivision and lot line realignment as an unlisted action and to conduct an uncoordinated review under the seeker regs?
So moved.
Whoa, that was simultaneous. I think I heard Bob first, because my left ear is better than my right ear.
Good, Bob.
And Fred was the second? All right, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that is an unlisted action. So it seems like the amended application is on the right track. So MJ has listed a number of items that need to be addressed, I think, before moving ahead with the actual seeker determination and/or approvals. But let's see, can you summarize what remains to be done?
I think the biggest things would just be from SHPO and from National Heritage. So if you can get those two things, those are the only things that would really be holding you up.
Yeah, those would be the main seeker issues.
Correct.
may I request that the board authorize a referral to the county planning department?
Can I?
I'll let you,
In this county, they don't look at subdivisions.
Oh, okay.
They will not, they have no, they
Oh.
don't want any jurisdiction,
Oh,
so
okay,
it doesn't
fine.
go to the county.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, forget that.
I was gonna get.
So if you want to do it, go ahead.
Yeah, no, we'll
No.
pass on that.
no.
May I request that the board schedule a public hearing for your June meeting?
Well, I think that might be a little bit premature, since there are still some other items on the checklist from the MJ memo that still probably should be done, so let's see. So you're talking about the drainage analysis / stormwater information.
SHPO.
Erosion and sediment control plan.
That's, yeah, I mean, that's part of the plan, that's not.
Right, but I'm saying for a public hearing.
So the erosion and sediment control plan's on the plan. It's on the last page. It's on this page, and then there's an erosion and control sediment plan. This entire note section is an erosion and sediment control plan. So that's on there. I guess from a drainage perspective, it's a single-family house. I mean, it's relatively insignificant drainage impact. Ultimately, I mean, we can show that in a report, that's fine, but it's not going to be like a significant.
No, and you just go through,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's fine.
that's, ultimately, that's probably what the result of the study is going to be.
Yeah,
But there,
absolutely.
just, I mean,
Definitely.
it's outlined in the zoning, just to go through that and provide that.
Yeah, we'll definitely include that.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think there's going to be a major issue, but just one of the boxes that we need to check.
Oops, I never should have opened this. One of the few board members who still looks at paper plans. So, all right. Yeah. So, any other questions or comments from anyone? So we're getting there. This is definitely in a lot better position than the last time. So I think we'll be probably there once these things are submitted.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thank you. Good night. So we've got only one more item left, which is the Town Zoning Board of Appeals referral on the Planet Fitness site. I think we can excuse our attorney and engineer.
Take no exception to
Unless
that.
you prefer staying to hear.
Yes. Thank you very much. It's been a long week already.
Yeah, thank you for all your help.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good night. See you next week.
I will ask Debbie to stay, however, because you may have some helpful, valuable information for us.
I don't, that's
And also, you can't start,
You're just so important.
also, you can't start clearing out your stuff until we're done.
I'm not clearing out anything, I'm upgrading computers while the meeting's going on, so I'm not leaving.
Oh, boy. Sorry to hear that. All right, so
Forget this time.
this last item is Town Zoning Board of Appeals referral, Planet Fitness, 18 Westage Drive, area variances, or singular, actually, now, as you will hear.
Correct.
Board to review Town of Fishkill ZBA referral of application number ZB 25-002, area variances, now singular. So, let's see. So you may have all heard that Planet Fitness will be opening soon at 18 Westage Drive in the space formerly occupied by Regal Cinemas and Famous Footwear in the PSC Planned Shopping Center zoning district. So this is strictly a referral from the ZBA. I just wanted to make it very clear that no narrative or site plan has been provided, and no application for a site plan modification was submitted to the planning board. The applicant states that no changes are proposed to the existing building or to the site, except for signs.
And whatever they're tearing apart right now
Well,
on the building, so.
yeah, what have you observed there? I haven't really looked too closely at it, but
The one whole side, I guess they're making a new entrance or a different entrance, but I don't know if that has to do anything with us.
wouldn't that be a change to the building, if that is indeed happening?
You're saying it's not a site plan change?
I know that's what they're saying. So we're not going to get into a long discussion about that. We're going to focus on the signs, but just to point out, there is no site plan modification proposed, and that has to do with the way the building department currently functions. Sure. I have some more information for you, but go ahead.
You probably do know the answer. I don't know the answer. I, too, noticed stuff. And so my thought process is, and for everybody out there, we should all know, if they are not changing the footprint, if you will, does that mean they don't have to bring it to the planning board? If they're doing only internal renovations, they can go to the building department. But if they're doing something to the footprint, but what about if they're blowing out a wall to put in a bigger, it includes only the building department, not the changing of the footprint?
Or as somebody mentioned, what if they're changing the entrance or access to the building? That would be another question.
I can tell you that, which, you see that little ball on it, that was the exit way from the theater. That's becoming now the entrance way to the...
I can't hear you, Bob.
Where you see like the little ball, like it says right there, it's like there's doors there.
The top picture, you mean? The top
Yeah, no, the bottom picture.
Okay.
That is now the entrance. It used to be an exit only out of the theater.
Correct.
So now that's going to be the entrance to the club.
Okay.
Okay, so
'Cause I noticed
that's actually the,
too.
believe it or not, that's the actual, considered the, when you go back there, the front of their building, but it's actually the back of the movie theater.
Correct.
Yeah, that's
And
a huge, that used to be a huge.
The movie theater, and then onto the side there, the shoe store.
I totally understand that. My question is, when I went by, I noticed all this activity, and I don't recall anything coming before us. And then I thought, maybe it didn't require to come before us, because it's still the same footprint. But then I noticed over in Newburgh, the construction of how they're doing it over there at the Newburgh Mall. And I'm sure it's going to be very similar to here.
One thing I was concerned about was just that they made sure that they did come to the building department before they were doing demo work and everything else.
I think you have to.
Yeah.
I don't even think that's, even in your own
I cannot answer that
home,
question. I have nothing to do with the
possible.
building department.
No, but I'm just saying that's, and I made a call and stuff.
Because that's how buildings fall down.
Yeah, no, but they did.
So
now we're going to talk about the signs.
So continuing, the zoning administrator submitted a memo to the ZBA, and that's in our packets dated May 1, 2025, stating that the application submitted to the ZBA was a request for a 56.6 square foot area variance needed from town code with regard to the proposed spaces of the existing pylon sign, where 20 square feet per side is permitted and 48.3 square feet per side of the existing pylon is proposed, so larger than permitted. However, the zoning administrator's memo also states that this variance is no longer required due to the fact that the pylon sign is existing, and this would be a verbiage change only. And the request for the other variance at the site is still required.
That's correct.
I was at the meeting.
So,
No.
The remaining sign variance then request is for 3 wall signs totaling 376.1 square feet, where 2 wall signs totaling 65.4 square feet is permitted in the PSC zoning district. So that's what we're looking at. So they provided, some nice elevation drawings and details. So, my impression of the signs is that they do seem somewhat excessive, especially since they are going to have that pylon sign out by Route 9 that will be advertising Planet Fitness for, cars driving by. So once you get in there, it's probably possible that there could be somewhat less square footage of the signs to just show people what this building is. So, that's my thought. I'd suggest that maybe the total wall sign area be reduced so that the magnitude of the requested variance can be reduced a little bit. But of course, that would be up to the ZBA.
So what are they asking us to do?
Exactly. I was just
Well-
On the signage.
Well, they're not even asking us to do anything. They're simply following the code requirement to refer
Correct.
the sign variance proposal to the planning board.
Of course, I listened to
But
that
what
meeting.
are we supposed to do then?
Well, we don't have to do anything.
No.
You're supposed to
That-
review it.
So option 2 is no action, no motion necessary.
That's right.
Option 1 is, if we feel strong enough about it, we could send a recommendation to the ZBA saying, it looks a little bit, excessive in terms of square footage. It certainly exceeds the code requirement by quite a bit.
So we can fight them again.
Which sign are you
Yeah, which
in
one?
question of? Because that sign there.
Well, it's
right
kind of the
It's the
total.
overall signage.
It's the overall
Oh, the
total
overall-
square
No, no, I
footage of the
understand,
building
but I'm
sign.
saying that sign there is just filling in where the movie theater sign was before.
Doesn't matter.
All right,
It's the
I'm
total
just-
signage area.
Okay.
And I'm sure the ZBA will be looking at this in a lot more detail than we will be.
Absolutely.
Well, they already did.
No, they did not.
I thought at
This
the
is the
last,
first public hearing. They have not commented on it.
No, they didn't.
Ah.
They didn't yet. No.
So this is the Route 9 sign. This will be the.
Yeah, it's where we used to see the sign for the,
But
for the
whereas
movie
the
theater.
inside signs are different, right?
Well, there's the other side. That's the back of the theater. It's a small sign there, and then that little thing over the doorway to let people know that that's the doorway.
And
That's how it was explained at the ZBA meeting.
Do you have an image of the pylon sign,
Which we don't need anymore?
which we don't need anymore, which we're not commenting on anymore? Yeah, there it is.
You see what was supposed to go in there, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's, yeah,
This is
that's somebody else's sign, right?
Yeah, but that
Well,
portion that
that's because
says,
that was planned to be there originally, I guess. They didn't come in.
Yeah.
but the part saying Planet Fitness, I guess, is what
Yes.
they want to put up there.
And they're taking down the other thing from the old movie theater. right?
So the code says they get 20 square
Because I heard
feet on
I
that,
heard something about that.
on that pylon sign. They should get 20 square feet per side, but because the sign already exists,
They can get more.
It's a verbiage change according to Joel because the sign exists.
Yeah, the size is already there.
The sign being the
That's what
regal.
was said.
Yeah, it used to be a
No, no,
Regal.
no, the pylon sign.
the one you just had up a minute ago.
I mean, it used to be Regal, now it is going to be Planet Fitness.
Yeah, now it's gonna be whatever sign it is, yeah.
But the total square footage of signs that they're putting on this building is what we're talking about.
Correct.
Yes,
Yeah, so we're just talking about wall signs.
Wall signs, that's it.
yes.
Well, this one here is huge too. 20 feet, 25 plus.
Because you need to see that big thumb.
So it's totally up to the board if you want to do anything or nothing.
They
I'm
didn't
fine.
listen to us last time.
I'm fine with either way. I don't have a strong feeling, especially since we don't have any site plans to look at. It's hard to even tell how those parts of the building, unless you're familiar with it like Bob is more than I am,
well, let's.
where on the site plan this would be located, but we have no site plan.
Bob, what are they going to do with the old entrance?
Huh?
the old entrance to the theater. What are they
They
doing with
didn't,
that?
they didn't show that.
In the center.
That's what I'm saying, I don't, you know, this is a four-sided building, but the cinema going in from the inside, people, if they're not gonna use it for anything, I don't even see any need for a sign there.
Well, they may have to, they may have to leave the doors because of an
We don't
egress.
have, we don't have the details of the building, Fred.
I don't have the details of the building, but I would think they have
You
to
can
leave
call the
some of
building
the doors
department,
for
they may be
egress.
able to provide them to you.
You gotta have different points of egress if you have a, like a
Well,
planned building, so I'm sure
well,
that there's a code.
I mean, I
Well, like you
understand
said, but there is
emergency,
no
I
other
understand
drawings.
emergency, but they don't have any
I
parking.
came to the ZBA meeting and this is what they just showed, it's the same.
They don't have to submit building plans to the
Yeah.
ZBA.
But that's what they showed this.
Exactly, this is what,
what
yeah,
they
yeah.
showed, yeah. It was one cut, it was one cut and this.
Usage, what's the parking requirement?
No, that is all planning, that's
Not a
part of
change
it.
in use.
Does the zoning board say all of that?
It's not a change in use, that was determined by Joe.
Well, it's not a change in use, but I mean, it's because it had enough parking for the Regal cinemas.
Yeah.
The presumption is somebody said, oh, okay, you'll have enough parking for benefit.
Well, the hours are different though, too. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
Planet Fitness is open 24 hours.
So John, in terms of the sign, the only thing we have are those two renderings
Yeah.
of the two elevations.
Yeah.
Really would be helpful to see like a photo of the existing building and with it super, it's really hard to gauge from elevation view
I'm not on the board,
to
so
come
I'm
up with a
quiet.
real, no, I mean, you're looking, asking the board whether or not we want to
We should
provide
be
an
asking
opinion on
them.
this. It's really hard to
Yeah,
make
make
one
the
just
middle
based off
No,
of
no, you should be asking.
It's hard.
That's true.
elevation views when, it'd just be nice to see the, I mean, it's an existing
It's
building.
not a requirement of the ZBA, so that's up to you.
There is, well, the other drawing you had that shows the building, right? It does show like an elevation.
Well, kind of.
That.
That's the elevation drawing.
That's what I'm saying, I mean.
So that's the front of the building, that's the back of the building,
Yeah.
that's basically it.
That's all you're gonna get. Sorry.
Is it too big? Probably.
You know,
They're all too big.
I'm
but-
sure there are some kind of drawings or blueprints to what they did inside. I'm sure there.
You'd have to go to the building department to
Yes,
access
that's what
those
I'm saying,
drawings.
yes, that's what I'm saying.
We
That
should-
there is
I do not have
blueprints.
access to the building department drawings.
We
Yeah.
shouldn't care about what's inside.
So,
You can tell I'm just keeping my mouth shut because no,
I'm
no,
trying to.
no kind words will come out of it if I
Mine
talk.
either.
I mean, the inside part, we shouldn't care
Jonathan,
what they
you
do
just-
inside.
That's
inside the
exactly what I'm thinking. I'm thinking
The
I-
building department has to care
Yeah.
for that. Somebody has to be responsible what they're doing inside, I mean, so that's the building department.
Correct.
Not the planning board.
No, not the planning board, because it's more structural and moving stuff around. It's like you redoing your house.
Yeah.
You're not putting a new house
Yeah,
on
yeah,
a new
I
lot
know,
and
yeah,
everything.
so
You're not
that's-
tearing it down. If you tear it down, then you have to come with new.
they're asking us if they want 3 signs? Is that what?
They're not asking us anything.
That's good.
They're just telling us that they're going to use 3 signs which are exceeding the size.
Why put ourselves in a position where we're going to get nothing but acrimony out of it?
Exactly, annoyed.
Because that's what the code says, they have to refer it to you.
Yeah, it's just the code, I mean,
Right.
they're following the procedure.
All it is a referral. That doesn't mean we have to do squat.
I mean, my thought is if the pylon sign, they're gonna get if the pylon sign's gonna get the extra square footage anyway, then make the applicant for the signage on the building
Yeah.
meet the requirements of the zoning code. They're getting the extra square footage on the road, so everybody who's driving on Route 9 is gonna clearly see that there's a Planet Fitness there. Since they're getting the extra square footage on the pylon sign from the road, they should be meeting the town requirements. They should not be requesting a area variance for signage on the building.
But that's for ZBA to determine, right? I mean,
Well, they're asking our opinion. That's my opinion.
It's a good opinion.
But are they gonna follow it? Who the heck knows?
They also have to submit this to the county, right?
Yes, actually, I have to get that to you, I did get that back.
Oh.
I'll get it to you tomorrow.
Just a preview, are there,
Would you like
there
me
were,
to pull
were
up?
there any comments or was it just a,
No, there were comments.
okay, there were comments.
Give me 1 second.
The county will have their usual good comments on this kind of thing.
The county usually provides some pretty solid comments, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. The county.
Okay, so this is, I'll read it. This came in the other day. This was issued based on the original application, which had the one that Joel removed, which they did acknowledge they received. And it's from Emily Dozer. It is dated May 5th. Comments: based on discussions with the town zoning administrator, the applicant plans to reuse the existing monument sign and not enlarge it, so the monument sign area variance that was originally contemplated is not required. However, this application provides an opportunity to reduce the sign's non-conforming size. We suggest that the bottom reader board position be removed, since it is unnecessary for the proposed use and not very legible from the road, from Route 9. The requested wall sign area variance is substantial, as the proposed wall sign area is almost 6 times the maximum allowed in this district. Importantly, this amount of signage does not appear necessary. 1 wall sign on the west elevation, rather than 2, would be sufficient for tenant identification and visibility, along with 1 wall sign proposed on the east elevation. The 2 wall signs could be reduced in size significantly, especially if the Planet Fitness text, rather than the logo sign, is used. As these signs are easy to read and identifiable from a distance, the monument sign will alert drivers on Route 9 that Planet Fitness is in the plaza. The wall signs need only be large enough to direct drivers already in the plaza area. If a sign is desired above the doors on the west side of the building, the Planet Fitness sign proposed for that side could be located there instead of near the roof line. If the town is inclined to grant a variance, it must grant the minimum amount necessary per New York State law. Recommendation: for the reasons stated above, we recommend that the board not grant the variances for the wall sign area or the number of wall signs.
I make a motion we concur with.
That was my whole point about the monument sign. They're getting the extra square footage on the road, so that's gonna get them into the development. Once they get in there, they don't need the extra signage on the building if they're gonna get the monument
And
sign.
people know where they're going for that one.
I'll leave it up to the board. Do you want to do a formal memo, or do you just want me to state that you agree with the Dutchess County
Well,
planning?
I think I heard a motion.
I make a motion with plan,
I agree.
Agree with the,
I agree with county planning. County planning basically said what we
So
were
Fred
saying.
moved it, and who seconded it?
And if we do that, though.
Kevin seconded it.
no, Jody has some comment.
Discussion?
If we do that, Joel already said it wasn't necessary, so.
Doesn't matter.
No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying we agree with the county comments.
We are agree.
That we do, I agree with that too. I don't think that all that massive sign is necessary.
That's what the county comments.
Okay, so we had a motion from Fred, a second by Kevin to agree with the county's comments. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes, so
And that'll
The
go to
motion is
Planet
basically agreeing with the county.
agreeing with the county's referral letter to the ZBA. So I'll work with Debbie to get a short, very short letter on letterhead together.
Thank you.
And this will be considered next week at the CBA meeting?
The ZBA's meeting is this coming
Tuesday, 7
Tuesday.
Yeah, I know, next week.
So it's got to be fairly quick, yeah.
We usually do it on Monday, because Debbie probably won't be here tomorrow.
Especially if we keep talking.
going.
All right,
All right.
Bob has to go to sleep, so we got to get out of here.
So we're done.
I'm fine.
I think we're
I'm good,
basically
actually.
done.
Yes, be a long hour.
Let's see. Anything else that board members would like to bring up?
Long hour.
Yeah, I'm just, maybe I'm going to start an issue here, but
Oh, good.
no. I'm just saying, as I'm listening to everything, I just don't want to make, like, the people like Planet Fitness or anybody else be like the punching bag in between when we're doing stuff. I just don't, because, we're having issues with code enforcement or something like that and everything else, and it's just because, like you said, they're trying to bring business into our community and something that I think people want. So I just don't want to make it like a thing of like punishing Planet Fitness because of,
We're not, though.
no, I'm just,
On this one.
I'm just telling you my feeling. I'm
Yeah.
not saying it's right. I'm just telling you my feeling. Because a lot of people like to speak, so I just want to speak.
Are you suggesting that by us agreeing with the county recommendations that we might be punishing Planet
No,
Fitness?
no,
I
no.
know, that's what I'm.
No,
I
no.
That's what I'm hearing.
No. I just, the way we were just having a conversation, I just said, yeah, the county, yeah, they have their standards of what they want to do, and that's fine. You know, then the zoning board, like you said, has to decide whether they want to grant it or not, and like you said, we're going to make a recommendation from our, because they sent it to us, we got to send something back.
Yeah. And,
But in
and
response,
you were at the meeting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you heard that they were concerned about all the
Oh,
signs
yeah,
and
you know, no,
signs.
Ron was not going to just,
They weren't going to give them that,
no,
so.
so.
but in response to that, Bob, it would be just like with the Homeland Suites group. Their colors are that weird neon-y yellow-green, and we're not really fond of it. Are we punishing them?
No.
No, I mean.
I go on record, I think the color's fine.
Yeah, I had no problem with the color.
I'm
Well,
just
I
telling you,
don't-
I'm just, see, that, now we're becoming interior designers. And that's,
No, that's exterior
We're
design.
talking on the exterior,
Wow.
that green.
But I'm just saying, you know.
That's,
All right.
that's
Part of the
the.
site
The
plan
meeting
process,
is,
Manir.
the meeting is,
Part of the site plan process.
I'm sure the people at home who may still be watching are probably finding
know,
this
the people
rather
that-
humorous, so I'm going to
Okay.
ask for a motion to adjourn.
so, second.
We're out of
All
here.
right.